Throughout the history of aviation, the idea of going higher, faster, and further than before has continually been tested. Dating back to the early 20th century, Edwards Air Force Base has played a major role in the U.S. Air Force's ability to break barriers. Whether it's flying at the speed of sound or exploring the possibilities of space, the ideas have been tested in the skies above the Antelope Valley at the center of the aerospace testing universe. Hey everybody, welcome into day one of the 2020 Hybrid Aerospace Valley Air Show. I'm Dan Hawkins from the Air Education and Training Command Public Affairs team, and I am delighted to be joined today by the commander of the 412th Test Wing and Edwards Air Force Base, Brigadier General Matt Heiger, and the command chief of the 412th Test Wing, Chief Master Sergeant Ian Eashan. Broadcast Central, I think we're outside Stark Industries, are we not? Or is it base operations?
Yeah, it could be one or the other. The great news is that there's a lot of innovation happening here, and it very well could be Stark Industries. The difference between Stark Industries, folks, and what we do here at Edwards is that our products are real. They're impacting your daily life every day, and they're going to do so for decades into the future. This hybrid air show is just one more example of what we've done here, despite what we have all gone through the last 6 to 8 months. And I'm thrilled to be here. I know you're going to have a great 2 days and 4 hours of airplanes flying today and tomorrow.
And Chief, this is really exciting, but it's not really day one of the air show. It's actually day 5 of the air show because we've been doing STEM activities all week long.
Yeah, so I think normally you would have 1 day of STEM, you'd have a bunch of students on the base for about a day, and then we'd start into the real air show. The best part about this hybrid solution, it allowed us to do an entire week of STEM. All of that's been recorded. We had STEM for elementary school, middle school, bilingual. We had NASA and our test pilots and engineers, experts in their field that were able to actually bring students through curriculum, learning physics, engineering, aerodynamics, and those things are all going to be still available for anybody who wants to use them as part of their online curriculum at home.
And sir, that's really the beauty of Edwards Air Force Base and really the entire Aerospace Valley is science and technology, engineering, math, even medicine. It all matters here.
It does. This is a special place. The air we breathe, the dirt we walk on has so much history and so much potential. And the people that are here, they're here by choice. They're fired up to be here. We're agile. We're innovative by nature. Our organizations are dynamic. And this air show is just another example of how we pivoted when our nation needed us to and led the way.
And so we have a lot planned for you. We actually have cameras all over the place, including out in Lancaster and Bakersfield, as well as around. As you check out our camera locations there on the screen, we've got them on the flight line in the tower. It's going to be an exciting day full of nothing but air power on a gorgeous day.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So I want to foot stomp here that this is the only air show with airplanes flying this year. It was a national event that pushed us to this, and the event of fifth day of an air show, the first 4 days being virtual, and now we can go virtual and real, is a first of kind. That could not have happened without a whole bunch of people behind the scenes today broadcasting and getting us here to this event.
And so let's take a look at today's schedule of events. And again, today, day one, at least of the flying. We'll also have flying tomorrow. But we have a full day here as the flying. We're going to get started. But obviously, the Air Force Academy, their parachute demonstration team, the Wings of Blue, are going to kick us off. We've got a great national anthem singer. And then there on the screen, you can see, General, that the first flight arriving in Palmdale. I can't wait to see some iron in the air.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the iron that's making a bunch of noise right behind us now in the air over the entire Aerospace Valley and really bringing the air show to the people this year. I want to foot stomp that the biggest thing in an air show for me when committing to the 2020 air show was not necessarily to just focus on airplanes or even just Air Force, but to focus on joint and international partners and the bigger technology things as well. You know, when I think STEM, which is really science, technology, engineering, and math, there's a lot more to it than just airplanes, although airplanes are a big benefactor of that. When I think science and technology, but especially the tech part, there's a whole bunch of folks that look a lot more like Chief Eischen involved in the technology that are in the Air Force than me. So, Chief, if you want to talk to quick to your background or a couple other enlisted technology fields,
yes, sir.
Great.
You know, even 5 minutes before this meeting, I was in a meeting with our EOD, so basically our bomb squad for the Air Force, and we were going through compression shorts with sensors, and we're using those sensors to look at what they're dealing with under stress when they're wearing a bomb suit. How do we track that? What kind of muscle fatigue? That then goes to a predictive analytics platform with artificial intelligence, and we have, you know, staff sergeants and senior airmen that are running that right now. We can look at the same thing with tracking day-to-day movements of our people and how they're actually performing day-to-day and figuring out when can we train harder and when do we need to pull back even though the airman is ready to go. And you can say the same thing for EOD, our security forces, so our Air Force defenders or police, our maintenance professionals, our leadership professionals. Really, you can't find a squadron on this base that's not doing some sort of test, and science, technology, engineering, and math has a place in it all throughout the base.
And so let's take a look at some of the aircraft that you're going to see above the skies here today. As you can see, some pretty awesome technology, and it takes all of those STEM career fields and specialties and disciplines to put all these aircraft in the air.
Absolutely. So when you think about the raw science that allows us to conquer flight, that's an obvious thing. When you think about the engineering that it takes to make that raw science reality, that's great. The math is really the language that wraps all around it. And actually, math is growing in importance today in the form of data science. So we talk artificial intelligence and data analytics. That's really a mathematical career field. But the one I want to foot stomp right now, which may not be obvious, but boy, there's a perfect picture to drive this home. Yeah, that's an awesome picture. I'm getting chills just watching that, and it's happening right behind us. The technology and the people that are very fluent in the technology that actually built those airplanes often get left off that big STEM umbrella. And so a hats off to all the folks that actually bent that metal and did those rivets and put that carbon fiber and fiberglass into place, and the folks that maintain it. Those are all highly technical career fields, have a well-deserved place in STEM. And so even if you don't want that advanced degree in physics, there's a large opportunity here in STEM, specifically in the technology with those airplanes. This is what we call an elephant walk. A lot of pride right there. And all those airplanes are based at Edwards Air Force Base, as you see that.
Can I add one thing to that,
Absolutely,
sir? So
Chief.
if we look, we've got airplanes that are 40 years old with airplanes that are 15 years old, and then we've got internals that are maybe a year old. And so trying to get all those aircraft to talk to each other adds a whole nother dimension to it.
Absolutely. And I tell you, we're going to talk through the list of airplanes here as they fly over it. But, we've got airplanes that maybe don't look as old as they actually are, but T-38 is a beautiful flying piece of history that is still teaching and training us today. And the B-52, what a legacy. And it is still pushing the frontiers.
And, sir, I'm being told that we're about ready to actually get started because the Wings of Blue are getting ready to take flight here. So we're going to kick it over to Cadet First Class Kit Reger from the Wings of Blue parachute team to take us on to the start of this
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Cadet First Class Kit Reger from Heston, Kansas, and it is my privilege to narrate for you a precision free-fall demonstration brought to you by your United States Air Force parachute team, the Wings of Blue. Today's demonstration, the jumpers will be jumping out of a C-17 from McCord Air Force Base in Washington. Our drop zone control officer for today's demonstration is Master Sergeant Joshua Thompson from Camarillo, California. Master Sergeant Thompson has over 4,000 jumps to his credit. Assisting his ground crew in today's jump is Cadet First Class Matthew Vittikin. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention overhead, where you will notice our aircraft on jump run for the first and only pass in today's demonstration. In this pass, jumpers will exit the aircraft from an altitude of 5,000 feet. At this time, our jump master is giving final corrections. And there they go! Our jumpers have exited the aircraft and are falling to the ground in speeds of excess of 120 miles per hour. In free fall, the jumpers will maintain visual contact with each other and will wave and deploy their canopies simultaneously. At this time, all jumpers have successfully deployed their main parachutes and are setting up for precision landings in the target area that you see before you. The Wings of Blue was founded in 1964, over 50 years ago, by a group of renegade skydivers. We are proud to represent the United States Air Force and the Air Force Academy at demonstrations such as this one. Each year, the Wings of Blue perform at more than 50 special events, including college football, NFL, MLB games, and air shows around the world. The other half of the Wings of Blue is the competition team. The competition team has 21 cadets who compete in two-way, four-way, six-way, and accuracy landing competitions. The Wings of Blue competition team has dominated collegiate national skydiving championships for 35 consecutive years, making us the winningest collegiate parachute team in history. You now see the jumpers have deployed their flags and are entering their patterns. Now entering the final stages of his pattern from Boulder, Colorado is Lieutenant Colonel Drew Judkins. Lieutenant Colonel Judkins is a C-130 pilot and the 98th Flying Training Squadron Director of Operations. Please give it up for Lieutenant Colonel Drew Judkins. Coming in next is Lieutenant Colonel Matt Hepp. Lieutenant Colonel Hepp is an F-16 pilot and hails from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Today, he flies the flag of the U.S. Army. Make some noise for Lieutenant Colonel Matt Hepp. Now on his base, Cadet First Class Tyler Daly. Cadet Daly is a mechanical engineering major from Cadet Squadron 31 and is carrying the flag of the Marine Corps. Tyler Daly. Coming in next from Bedford, New Hampshire is Cadet First Class Danny Flynn. Today, Danny is flying the flag of the United States Navy. Danny is an applied mathematics major from Cadet Squadron 15. Please welcome Danny Flynn. Now on his base leg from Tucson, Arizona is Cadet First Class Remington Vale. Today, Cadet Vale is flying the flag of the U.S. Air Force. Cadet Vale is an economics major from Cadet Squadron 22. Please welcome Remington Vale. Now during the final stages of his pattern from over yonder, Michigan, Cadet First Class Creston Martin. Today, Creston is flying the flag of the United States Coast Guard. Give it up for Creston. Coming in next from Gurnee, Illinois, Cadet First Class Jason Schultz. Jason is flying the Palmia flag and is an economics major from Cadet Squadron 28. Please give it up for Cadet First Class Jason Schultz. Now eyes to the sky, carrying 800 square feet of pure American freedom is Cadet First Class Marcus Ross. Marcus currently serves as the cadet commander for the Wings of Blue. And singing today's national anthem is Miss Esther Robinson. Esther is 11 years old, in 7th grade, and has been on honor roll every year that she has been in school. Please give it up for Miss Esther Robinson.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
And a beautiful rendition of the national anthem, and awesome to see the jumpers from the Wings of Blue, and then a little sound surprise from the sky as well.
So there's a whole bunch in that statement right there. I'll tell you, the Wings of Blue got to get another member of the team because there's another service flag to add next year, right? The United States Space Force is kicking off. Another exciting time to be in the Department of the Air Force, and the U.S. Air Force is very proud to have that brand new sister service. I'll tell you, it could have been the rocket's red glare and the bombs bursting, but in fact it wasn't, right? Those were high-performance aircraft launched from Edwards Air Force Base, and the breaking the sound barrier yet again on the 73rd anniversary of the weekend that it was broken for the first time right in the skies above the Mojave Desert.
As you get a look at some of the aircraft beginning to taxi out, you saw the T-38C Talon just a minute ago. I believe that's a C-12 Huron?
It is.
All right. So I'm doing pretty good so far as you take another look at the T-38s. So many aviation firsts here, Chief, and but it all ties back, as this whole week has, to the science, technology, engineering, and math, and the impact that all of that has on the mission here and what we are doing here for our Air Force, building the Space Force, and for our country.
Yes, sir. You can probably talk to anybody on this base that's already in a pilot or an engineering position, and they can take you back to an air show that they saw or to some sort of event that they went to where they were inspired, and we're hoping to do that same thing today for an entirely new generation of children.
And, sir, I know with your 3,000 flight hours and 40 different types of aircraft you've flown, I'm guessing you've flown the T-38 Talon that we're seeing on the screen right now.
Yeah, I may not have flown those exact tail numbers, although I might have. But yeah, that was the first high-performance airplane that I flew, and the one on the screen right now is the second high-performance airplane that I flew. That's an F-16D, and that was the first combat aircraft that I ever flew. The C-12 you mentioned a little earlier, I got a little time in those as well. And so it's been a great aviation career, but more importantly, I'm a geek at heart. I happen to be a pilot on the side, and I'm a proud geek as well. I love math. Math was my first language. Engineering was a natural fit because I enjoyed sciences, but didn't want to be stuck in a lab all day. And speaking of that, the airplanes that you see there, especially that F-18 trailing the T-38s right there, those are labs. Those are the experiments, or the places we actually go explore the unknown in partnership with NASA and other folks here. And that was what really drew the two together for me: the enjoyment of flight, the love of science and engineering and math, and got me here to the test community.
And I really want to point out, sir, that this is not just a demonstration for air power's sake. We're actually doing live testing missions today with all of these aircraft.
Absolutely. So these aircraft stories are not being generated just for the air show today. And there's a B-52 0031. I suspect that airplane is actually older than every person involved in this broadcast today. But these aircraft that you're going to see over the valley today and tomorrow, many of them, in fact, most of them, are also actually collecting data that are helping progress or push forward our national competition against peer adversaries. The air crew, at a minimum, are getting training and proficiency out of it, and that keeps them more sharp so that when they are flying or doing testing, we're more efficient and effective at it.
And the aircraft will be launching here momentarily, and I'm delighted to be joined on the set along with Brigadier General Matt Heiger, the commander of the 412th Test Wing at Edwards Air Force Base, but the vice commander of the Air Force Test Center, Colonel Keith Rossig, call sign Rocks. And, sir, we're glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate being out here today.
Yeah, and so, we were talking a little bit before we went on air with with the general, but he was talking about the Air Force Test Center as a whole and just the wide scope of your operation. So I was wondering if we could just start right there and talk about just the span of your operations.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously we've got a large enterprise across the nation, so 34 locations, 18,000 people. And while a lot of folks associate Edwards with the test center, with the flight test and the long history that Edwards has here, there's a lot of operations going on at a number of locations. That could be ground tests, so it could be wind tunnels where we're getting aerodynamic data or thermal data, environmental data in chambers. It can be command and control systems for data links. There's a lot of other systems that test procedures that build up to then lead to the flight test. And so it's a great time in the Air Force Test Center. Not only are we going through a large modernization effort, so there's a lot of work across kind of the classic areas. There's a lot of new mission areas that we have, including directed energy, space warfighting, hypersonic weapons, nuclear modernization. So there's actually a number of new mission areas for AFTC on top of the more classical areas that we have.
Wow, what a gorgeous shot from our 2nd Audio-Visual Squadron crew, bringing you all the pictures today from Hill Air Force Base in Utah. And I know for both of you, that's a beautiful sight.
It is. Yeah, I was on a C-17 yesterday, helping the Wings of Blue team get ramped up for what you saw them do here a few minutes ago. Rox, I suspect you have a little bit of time on a C-12 as well. And if you wouldn't mind, talk them about your time in the cockpit of a C-17 as an engineer.
So we did, during test pilot school, we did get about 5 or 10 minutes at the controls of a C-17. And obviously it's much more of a modern cockpit than some of the older cargo aircraft. So we get to have time to see how the plane responds to inputs and then compare that to some of the other aircraft that engineers do get to fly during test pilot school. And obviously those are things that we as engineers like to prove, because we ourselves fly on C-17s going in and out of deployments and things like that. So my most time is actually on a C-17 is in and out of Afghanistan during a deployment. So see the operational side as well as the test.
Absolutely. So one of the things that as you talk to Colonel Rossig and other folks that look like me, you'll note that we're all aircrew. Our wings are slightly different. And Rox, if you wouldn't mind giving the audience just a quick overview of what a flight test engineer is, and if you want to contrast that with what I do in the test community, I think there's a lot of unknowns out there that you can fill in for the crowd.
Absolutely. So flight test engineers.
Test one.
Activities that we do are in support of the pilots who are actually flying the aircraft, and so we spend most of our time in a control room collecting data and looking at the data in between test points to make sure that the things that we are doing are safe to proceed to other parts of the envelope. But we want to make sure that the engineers understand exactly what the pilots are doing, and so going through test pilot school, we do have the opportunity to do quite a bit of flying, or at least time in the aircraft, so that we can actually better support the pilots during actual test programs.
As you see the T-38s getting set to take off here in just a minute. As soon as we get a chance, we're going to throw up the map. So if you're out in the Antelope Valley, there you see it, sir, the west route. Obviously tomorrow it'll be a little bit different route, but a lot of great cities: Edwards, Palmdale, Lancaster, Rosamond, Mojave, and I can't say it, Tehachapi? I can't say it right.
Tehachapi.
Tehachapi,
yes.
Okay. Bakersfield, Cal City, and Barone. So if you're in those communities, you might want to get your lawn chair and go outside, because you're in for a treat today.
The iron we're putting in the sky, bringing the air show to the people, is literally departing off the Edwards Air Force Base ramp right now. There's a formation takeoff of T-38 Talons. You've got the pilot in the lead aircraft taking off down the runway, and the pilot in the wingman position actually flying formation as they accelerate down the runway with about 8 to 10 foot wingtip spacing. They'll rotate, take off, raise their gear as a formation, and that is something that we train to do in pilot training, and we stay proficient at it as we get out in the field if it's a part of the mission set. Rox, how many hours do you have in T-38s?
probably about 60, 70 hours, whatever we get during test pilot school. So since then, I haven't been in a T-38, but definitely have some fond memories during that year.
I tell you, one of the misconceptions that I find when I go out in the public and I start talking to folks that have not been affiliated or associated with the test community is that they assume it's only the pilots that are getting in the airplanes. But I have been in many, many, many test aircraft and many test events in the airplane with a flight test engineer backing me up and keeping me safe.
As we check out the time, so there's just a little generalization during those times. If you're in those communities, you can go outside and catch a glimpse of all the iron flying over. We've already had planes taking off, so please go outside and check out the planes. And we're actually going to have some great footage here as they fly by the tower on their returns. But like we talked about, they're just not just flying for our entertainment. They're also going out and actually doing operational missions for our Air Force right now in the test and evaluation. So, sir, I wanted to go back to you, Rox, and ask, what is the overall goal of the Air Force Test Center? What are you doing for the Air Force?
So we develop, test, and evaluate systems for warfighter capability. Obviously, this is the first place where some of the systems we develop in the Air Force meet reality, right? So we model, we do things in the lab, but when it gets to the test center, we actually go ahead and understand how the system actually performs in reality, and that allows us to feedback to the program managers how the system's performing, what corrections should be made, and so that they can make the appropriate decisions based on the information we give them.
So what are they flying right there, sir?
So you're testing my VID. I believe that is I believe that's an F-18 flown by NASA that is based here on the ramp. And there's an F-16D, which I know Rox also has a lot of time in as well. One of the unique things about being a flight test engineering student at test pilot school is that you actually get a front seat ride in the front of an F-16 for one of those syllabus rides. I assume you got that and the jet wasn't down. You want to talk about that experience?
Yes, sir. So the Vista aircraft is the only place where an engineer will be able to sit in the front aircraft, and it's because of the unique flight control system of that aircraft. So it's the one spot where an engineer actually gets to look through the HUD and actually understand what that is like, and we imagine it. We try to test those things, but as an engineer, it's a unique experience, and so I had a lot of fun on that aircraft as well.
And so, as we go through this science, technology, engineering, and math theme that has really been the theme for this Aerospace Valley Air Show this year in 2020, what is it about the STEM disciplines really attracted you and brought you to a career in the Air Force?
So I always was interested in math and engineering, and my father was a pilot in the Navy, so I think I was attracted to aircraft in that respect, and then the military in general. Chose the Air Force over the Navy. Obviously, they have a hard deployment schedule, so the Air Force seemed to be a better fit for me, but just from an early age, that was something that just fit for me, so I followed it from an early age.
Yeah, and another thing I found interesting about your background is you also did language at Monterey.
I did. So there's an engineer and scientist exchange program that the Air Force has with many countries across the world. It started in Germany in the 1950s. And so we will send officers through language school and then do an exchange program where you actually work in a research facility in a foreign country. So I was lucky enough to get to Germany and work for a couple years in one of their research labs.
As you get another beautiful shot there of takeoff, what's your favorite part of takeoff, sir?
My favorite part of takeoff happens just after takeoff. I will tell you that, and I'm sure Rox has experienced this too, in a full afterburner takeoff in a high-performance airplane like the F-16 we're watching there, if you keep the afterburner lit in most configurations, you can be moving well above 400 miles an hour by the time you get to the end of the runway. And that's enough energy if you have the profile. There's a good shot of the afterburner. To do a 3 to 4G pull, love the sound of freedom right there, everybody in the background. To do a 3 to 4G pull and climb away from the Earth at thousands of feet a minute and level off at 20,000 or more feet above that and hack your clock about a minute. It's just an amazing thing. They're called max performance climbs, and they never get old.
What about you, sir? What's your favorite part of takeoff?
I would say the exact same thing, mostly because any roller coaster you think when you accelerate real quickly, this is a lot better.
And that's a beautiful aircraft on your screen right there, sir.
It is. That's an F-35 stationed here at Edwards. We're the Air Force's latest fifth-gen fighter. One of the things that was a breakthrough in technology there is starting to do things that we now refer to as artificial intelligence, but in that aircraft they call it sensor fusion. When we started to have radars and other sensors on airplanes, the pilot or at the time the Wizzo had to do that work in their brain. The F-35 hunts in packs, and so the computers and the algorithms and the data links that connect the F-35 provide a more fused picture to the pilot or the pilots and allow them to make tactical decisions as opposed to fighting with their sensors, their radar, or other things like that. It's a neat airplane. It's a very loud airplane, which we'll hear during takeoff, and it's super capable.
So, of course, a fifth-generation fighter and one that's very familiar over the skies here at Edwards Air Force Base and the surrounding community. But I'm curious, Rox, how the mission of the test center, and how you're able to find all the people that you need to fly all of these different aircraft and not only fly them but maintain them and develop the testing. It's really a very broad enterprise that you do at the test center.
Absolutely. I'll pause for a second. You listen to F-35. Like I mentioned before, with the pace of work right now in the test center, it's hard to get engineers, maintainers, everybody that we need to make the mission happen. It's hard to get everybody because all the other centers are also pulling for personnel as well. So, but within the test center, we have a wide range of backgrounds, not just engineers and maintainers, but communication specialists. You still need medical personnel for the hospitals. So it's trying to get all those personnel across the center. It can be difficult.
And it really talks to the importance of why we need to focus our efforts in terms of recruiting and different things towards that STEM education and really inspiring those who might have potential interest in a career in aviation or aerospace to pursue STEM education.
Absolutely, and I think the great thing about this air show and reaching out to the community is to show that while a lot of folks think that engineering can be dry and mathematics and the physics courses, it's actually a lot of fun to get out here and see aircraft flying or a number of different tests we do. So it's fun to do. There's just also mathematics behind it that you need to understand, but it's fun as well as information.
And there you get a good look at a B-52 Stratofortress. I really found it interesting that during Operation Desert Storm, B-52s delivered 40% of the weapons dropped by coalition forces. Just a workhorse.
It has been a workhorse for many, many, many generations now. It's an amazing thing to watch that airplane fly. I will tell you, it is an even more amazing thing to watch the pilot in controls of that airplane during the takeoff. It was designed and built long before we had the luxury of fly-by-wire or computerized flight controls, and so those two pilots in the front of the aircraft right now are working not to scrape a wing, working to get it airborne. Very tight tolerances on when you can retract flaps and retract the gear. Kind of to Colonel Rossick's point, look at the way the gear and the gear doors pivot and rotate up. That's a non-trivial engineering feat right there. And if you're an engineer that was involved in the design or the math behind that or the sustainment of that, tremendous source of pride every time that does it, and does it tens upon tens of thousands of times successfully. And that's something simple, which isn't simple, like the landing gear.
So we now only have the H models in the Air Force inventory, I believe, for the B-52, but that's just a thing of beauty to watch that take off.
It is. It is really an amazing feat. I tell you, the B-52 is still a frontline combat aircraft for the United States Air Force and our nation. It is also a frontline test asset here at the Air Force Test Center for us. Rox, at your level and our boss's level, I know you're in discussions all the time with Air Force Global Strike Command on the value that we get out of the B-52s that are stationed here. Any additional thoughts you want to throw out on that?
So as old as those aircraft are, there's a lot of modernization programs going on, whether it be radar, engines, the ability for them to carry weapons as well. So one of our constraints right now is not having enough B-52s in the test center.
And the Air Force currently expecting to operate B-52s well into the future. This plane still has a long shelf life ahead of us. So you're going to see it around here probably for a long time to come.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's we don't take it jokingly. We're going to be the third largest B-52 base on the planet here in the not too distant future at Edwards. The B-52 right now is what we would refer to as a truck. It's one of the platforms that's hauling a lot of test assets that I'll say jokingly refer to as blivets at times, and we plink off those blivets or plink the blivets off and then watch them light off. And that pursuit into new areas of technology and new weapons development is a very important thing we're doing off of B-52s here at Edwards. Not just what we're doing to upgrade the combat fleet of B-52s itself, but using them as a bridge or an enabler for weapons technology and weapons development also.
The B-52 is currently flown by the 5th Bomb Wing at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, as well as the 2nd Bomb Wing at Barksdale. There's also Air Force Reserve Command Wing at Barksdale as well. So those are the 2 locations. I guess now the 3rd, of course, being here, as you said, sir. So just a beautiful sight. So just as a reminder, if you're out in the communities, the aircraft are up in the air. So, hopefully you're outside. I also wanted to bring up, sir, that you can catch this broadcast even if you can't sit by your computer. You can catch it on your phone. We're streaming on Twitch. We're on YouTube. We're on the Edwards Air Force Base Airshow website, avairshow.com, as well as edwards.af.mil. That is Edwards Air Force Base's official website. So wherever you might do your majority of your streaming, we're probably there.
Absolutely, and we'll be here tomorrow as well, same time and quite literally the same channels. Just as we've been on all those channels Monday through Thursday, many of those science, technology, engineering, and math broadcasts that we published live from 8 a.m. until about 4 p.m. Monday through Thursday are available for rebroadcast as well.
And Rox, I wanted to go back to the education part of STEM real quickly because you had a unique experience. You got your undergraduate degree in aeronautical engineering at UC Davis. You went on to do a master's degree at Notre Dame, but you also got the opportunity to get a PhD in aeronautical engineering at Notre Dame. How did that happen?
So at the end of basically the first Gulf War, right? So we were downsizing the Air Force. That's about when I came on and got commissioned, and they didn't need any engineers at the time. So I took an educational delay to Notre Dame. I enjoyed what I was doing there. The Air Force still didn't need engineers after a couple years, so I applied for a 2-year extension and was able to stay for a PhD. And that helped me a lot, just obviously understanding more of the technical background and set me up for success in the research lab at my first assignment. So a little bit of timing with just personnel systems of the Air Force and real-world events, how that affects the Air Force personnel system as well.
Yeah, and I really think that's one of the things that speaks, sir, to these greater opportunities that are out there. The Air Force has a ton of options for you in the education arena to do advanced education and set yourself up well for success in aerospace and the aviation testing industry.
Absolutely. I stand firmly that the Air Force is a very technical service. We have a technical culture. We prize education and learning and training. And I think if you look at any senior enlisted member, especially command chief's bio or any senior officer's bio, you're going to see that it wasn't a little bit of education and then decades of service. It was a lot of operational experience or a lot of frontline experience and then education, and then back to the front line and more education. And that type of continuous learning and training is really a core tenet and a core culture of the service. And you're going to see that, I think, double down or re-emphasize in the Space Force as well. So now it's a department of the Air Force cultural aspect. And if you are interested in learning more and you like learning and things like this are exciting to you, then this is the department and these are the services for you.
And I think it also speaks to the things that General Brown, our new Chief of Staff, has talked about: accelerating change or lose, and keeping pace with our adversaries in a high-end fight of tomorrow. It's not just something that we can just do. We have to strategically think about what we're doing and make sure that we're educating ourselves so we can keep pace with our adversaries.
Absolutely. So I'll hit on one component there from a historical perspective. We are all the benefactors, and quite literally the devices that we have on us right now, the personal devices, the computing power, all those other things are a direct lineage from what President Kennedy, the result of President Kennedy challenging us to go to the moon. And that moonshot, the NASA, the Apollo missions, spawned a large growth in education, a large growth in the acceptance or the understanding of kids and secondary and post-secondary students, and that this is really good stuff. There's a lot to be done here. And while the pinnacle was getting a person to the moon, it was also the large second and third order effects that really populated the technology and engineering across our nation, which was a huge competitive advantage for us in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. And so it's not just an Air Force imperative or defense imperative that we continue to show people STEM is awesome, math is a really cool language, engineering is great, but it's a national imperative, and we have to compete as a nation, not just as a military service.
And just a programming note, if you're in Lancaster, the T-38s are probably screaming over your house right now, so make sure you jump outside. And Rosamond and looks like Mojave, you're next, so get outside, pull up a chair, because the air show's starting for you in person. So really great stuff. And when you think about the educational aspect and all the education opportunities, Rox, that you've had, you also went to MIT and got a certificate in system design and management. But I think that really speaks to how the Air Force values not only education at the beginning. Obviously, we want people who are trained, and we teach them how to fly airplanes and do other Air Force specialty codes and jobs. But we really place a value on people getting better throughout the course of a career, developing the airmen we need.
Absolutely. So I've spent 4 years of my active duty career in school, so that's not counting the graduate school at Notre Dame. And most of that, some of that was technical, but a lot of it wasn't. You mentioned the language before. I also went through some schooling for international relations as well. So it is not enough just to learn the math and the engineering. As much as I would like to do that specifically, you need to be able to talk about strategic level ideas with not only folks within the Air Force, but within the government as well. So the education is not constrained to only a few small topics.
Yeah, and so when you think about your education, what was one of your favorite stories or memories from all the education opportunities that you've had in the Air Force?
The language training at Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California was my most favorite. That led to that exchange tour over to Germany, where I got to work with a lot of our NATO allies and learn to meet the local folks as well as be a part of the community there in Germany. And so that was really rewarding for me.
And, sir, you've had some great educational opportunities. Well, obviously a proud USC Fighting Trojan.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. So there's, I'm not going to sing the fight song for you, but I certainly could. I will not. I will tell you, folks, that one of the things the Air Force does is they bring folks from diverse backgrounds from normally, I'll say, warring camps together. And so the fact that Rox and I can sit at the same table with degrees from USC and Notre Dame is really a testament to the fact that despite our differences and maybe poor choices along the way, that we can get over that for the greater good and move on. And I say that for colleges and universities because that's I'll say a sibling rivalry, but it's actually true as well. You know, pilots and engineers as senior leaders together, that's not something that's common or normal in other services. And also, we have a very diverse background. We recruit from the larger American public in a relatively representative way, and I'm very proud of that. I'm also proud that our service has a long history of leading in that direction. I remember assessing and starting my active duty time with the first female aviators that became combat fighter pilots. And I've got examples like that throughout my 26 years on active duty, how the Air Force is leading and we're bridging gaps and we're recognizing the power of putting a diverse team together and encouraging the thought and really including what they can bring to the fight.
And in case you were wondering, you probably weren't, but I was, what was flying overhead when you started talking about USC, that was the FA-18 Hornet. So that's a pretty cool airplane that we don't necessarily fly a lot. It's more of a Navy aircraft.
It does have legacy Navy roots. You know, I not to poke fun at the F-18 and all my Navy sisters and brothers that fly it, but I do remind them as an F-16 pilot that the history of the F-18 is the YF-17, which actually lost in a fly-off to the F-16. So, but I don't remind them of any of that any more than I do remind them that they went to Notre Dame. But the good news is that the F-18 is a super important aspect of our joint fight. It's part of the combat power we present on behalf of the nation and our allies. And the awesome thing about being a naval aviator and working in naval units like that, not just the Hornet but others as well, is that we train jointly. We learn to fight jointly. It's a train as you fight. It's an equip as you fight. And even in the test center, it's a test as you fight. And so one of the things that you may have heard about is red flag. That's a big exercise that happens at Nellis Air Force Base. But there are other flag level exercises that we do here. And one that I'm really proud of and proud to be a part of, but it's really a center level item, is orange flag. Rox, you want to throw out a couple of items on orange flag?
So with the orange flag, the key point is multi-domain operations and test. And so the fight nowadays never is just about a single aircraft going against a single target, or even a single type of aircraft going against a set of targets. We will always be incorporating different types of aircraft, space assets, ground assets. How do we do the communications and that targeting, the bomb damage assessment potentially, all the things that go on to make that happen require cyber, space, air power, land power. And so how do we pull all that together to make sure that the effects we're trying to have can be done in a meaningful and efficient way?
And so I'm really interested because we talked about the joint aspect, but we also work a lot with agencies such as NASA here at Edwards. Can you talk about how the test center interacts with different partners outside the military?
So we have plenty of partners outside the military, whether those be either Department of Energy, perhaps. It could be research, civilian institutions in terms of universities. So there's always bringing in new technologies from different agencies, whether they be, we usually think of commercial entities from like a Lockheed or a Boeing, and there's those types of entities, but the university system, the Department of Energy, there are other government agencies we work with as well to make sure that we're pulling in those new technologies and understanding those so that we can evaluate them to the best of our ability.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so unique about Edwards over the course of time. I mean, it's really a who's who of military, industry, space exploration. I mean, just about everything that the mind can imagine, it's probably happened here.
Yeah, if you drive a stake at where we're sitting right now at the center of the aerospace testing universe, and you draw a 100-mile bubble, 100-mile ring around it, and you look at what's there today, it's amazing. That's truly amazing. And then you look at what's happened historically in that same bubble is also just amazing. Not the least of which is the lake bed just to our east. While I'm talking about that and getting all excited, you'll note that we've got a couple, it looks like F-35s over Lancaster right now. Folks, I hope you're enjoying the air show that we're bringing out to you. If we had the air show traditionally on Edwards Air Force Base, we'd be numbering the folks that could see airplanes fly in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands over a 3-day weekend. And now in the span of just about 2 hours, if we look at the population has a chance to look at this awesome display of technology and American air power, it's well into the hundreds of thousands. And so we're so proud to bring it to you. I hope you're enjoying it, Aerospace Valley. So back to technology and integration. The partnerships that we have, the Air Force doesn't have the corner on good ideas, but I think the Air Force has a really good, innovative culture as a service, and we're willing to take best of breed, even if it isn't invented here. We have a lot of partnerships with NASA locally. We have a lot of partnerships with research laboratories at MIT, like Lincoln Labs, Georgia Technology Research Institute in Atlanta, GTRI, other places like that we are tremendous partners with. And that type of partnering is bred into our joint and international and I'll say interagency training and culture. I grew up what we call purple in the military, learning to fight and work and learn and train and know my joint brothers and sisters.
Yeah, such a unique aspect to what we do here. And you might notice we've had a change. Rox had to leave, but we're delighted to be joined by Dave Vanoy, the technical director at the U.S. Test Pilot School. And, sir, how are you? Welcome to the set.
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing wonderful. And so tell us a little bit about the U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School. Actually, I think it's the U.S. Test Pilot School, is it not?
Yeah, it's still U.S. Air Force, although now that there's a U.S. Space Force, we may be in for a name change, but I'll let Dave talk to that.
Well, first let me just say hello to all the folks across Aerospace Valley. It's really a pleasure to be here today to talk to you about some of my favorite subjects. Certainly the Air Force Test Pilot School is near and dear to my heart, but so is the mission here. And I hope everyone's really enjoying the sounds of freedom. We've got tankers, transports, bombers, fighters, trainer aircraft flying across your valley right now. It was a way for us, General, as you've probably already said these words, but it's a way for us to give back to the valley. We thank you so much for your support of Edwards, your support of our mission, and especially your support of our people. And that definitely includes the men and women across this country, across the planet, that wear the uniform of the United States military. But I'm not going to lie, we miss seeing you in person. We really wish you were here. You could see the wonderful ramp we have out at Edwards, all the incredible airplanes and the incredible people here. We're planning an event. Now, General, keep me honest, but I believe it's in 2 years, October 2022. We're going to have an open house. We're going to open the gates. We're going to allow you to come walk the ramps here at Edwards and get up close and personal with these amazing aerospace vehicles. And more importantly, meet the men and women of Edwards Air Force Base that really, they dedicate their lives to providing capability to the American warfighter.
Yeah, Dave is exactly right. One of the things that's really neat about this this holiday weekend in October is that there's some great historical roots to it. I mentioned at the opening when we had the sonic boom that it was 73 years ago, within a couple days of now, that the X-1 broke the sound barrier in the skies above the Mojave Desert. And on the 75th anniversary weekend is what Mr. Van Hoy is referring to. We're going to have another open house and air show at Edwards Air Force Base on the 75th anniversary of the breaking of that barrier. So one of the interesting things, and I did not pre-coordinate this with Dave, but if you don't know what the Bell X-1 is, I know you're watching us online, Google it, look at it. It's a very neat picture. And if you look at what that airplane is and the shape it is, Dave and I could bore you to tears and talk to you all day about it, but we're not, so you're lucky. But there is one thing I'd like you to look at that picture, and then look at Dave's shirt and see what they have in common. I'll let Dave talk about Flight Test Orange for just a second.
Well, Flight Test Orange has got its roots historically in instrumentation. Years ago, when we started instrument airplanes in order to get decision quality data to make good decisions and understand how these aerospace vehicles fly, we wanted to keep them separate from the current coded black, yellow, red colors of wiring. So we used Flight Test Orange. And then we painted some of the airplanes orange. Typical Fridays, at least at Test Pilot School, we wear orange under our flight suits. I don't have a flight suit on today, so I'm bright and colorful here supporting Flight Test Orange.
Yeah, that is really great. And I kind of wanted to talk about the mission of the Test Pilot School for those who don't know, because, again, it goes back to all the opportunities we've already kind of talked about in this first 45 minutes plus of our broadcast here. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. As you see the live shot from Lancaster, California, we also have a camera out in Bakersfield. So if you're out in our communities on our flying route, please take some time and head outside. And I can't see it yet, sir. I'm not sure which aircraft that is that's flying over Lancaster. It's a B-52 Stratofortress.
Well, I was going to say, if you can't see it, then I can't talk about it. So, yes, that is a B-52. One of the things that you'll note as the B-52 flies on or near where you live, that it still has its original design engines in it, which is a pretty big trail of darker smoke. One of the B-52 modernization programs that Edwards is deeply involved in is going to be re-engineering the B-52s to extend their life for decades into the future.
So, Dave, I wanted to get back to the mission of the Test Pilot School, and so I was curious, what is the main mission at the Test Pilot School? And I obviously know you probably have a lot of different initiatives, but what's your charter?
You're right, there are obviously a number of things, but our primary charter is to produce highly adaptive, critical thinking flight test professionals who are going to lead and conduct developmental tests for aerospace vehicle weapon systems. So we're developing people. Our charter is an education mission, and we're developing talent that's going to go out and develop this capability for the warfighter.
And so this is an operation that, again, not just Air Force, but I talked with General Heiger earlier today, and he was talking about the international component, and he specifically mentioned Italy as one of your primary drivers of graduates, but there's also an international aspect to the training as well.
There's several international aspects, and it's interesting you bring that up right now as I'm watching the B-52 fly by on the monitor. Our students just finished what we call a capstone trip, where we sent them around the country to fly vehicles for the first time, their first time. And that included a trip to Shreveport, Louisiana, where they got to fly the mighty B-52. And I tell you, it's humbling for a fighter pilot to get in an airplane like that and try to air refuel where things just don't go the way you expect them to. So doing that, we're broadening the horizons for our students. And part of that broadening involves our international mission. Normally, we would send people abroad to our foreign partners so they could experience the way different countries approach T&E, test and evaluation. If you want to create somebody who's a chef as opposed to a cook, you expose them to the theory and the philosophy of test, but not just the way the Air Force does test, but the way our foreign partners do test. And that includes the Navy, and we even bring them in. So we try to have the full range. And we also have international partners that are students in our classes. We generally have about two students in each class. Right now in our senior class, we have a Canadian and a French engineer. In our junior class, we have a pilot from Singapore, and we also have Italian. So we've got the international presence. We have partnerships with all the NATO countries and some others.
And so we have a quick video so we can talk a little bit more and show you a little bit more about the Test Pilot School.
This is the world's premier flight test institution. So what we do here at the schoolhouse is we give them that test foundations so that they can learn to plan, execute, analyze, and report on different flight test objectives. Also teaching them graduate level academics and aerodynamics and energy and propulsion. They'll leave here and they'll be part of a test team. They'll discuss a plan of something that needs to be tested, whether it's a new widget on an aircraft or a whole new aircraft, and they'll work with their test team and develop the objectives that they need to achieve, and then they will go and figure out the flight test techniques that they need to fly to gather the data to meet those objectives, and then they'll execute the test plan, and that will be the pilots flying most likely, as well as maybe having a test engineer then in the control room or also flying on board collecting data and helping conduct the test. And then they'll all work together to analyze the data and then report on that. And those are some of the fundamentals we're teaching the students here, is to how to do that all together and to come up and maybe solve new problems that they haven't thought about, or maybe we haven't taught them to test specifically here, but to develop that mindset so that when they go to their test teams, they can help the team develop a proper way to test. In addition to our normal curriculum aircraft, which are the C-12, T-38, and F-16, we also bring in what we call qualitative aircraft to give the students usually just one flight and another type of aircraft so they can learn how different aircraft fly and things that they may not be used to in their normal aircraft and how that affects flight tests, and make them think about things differently that they may not consider. So they'll fly anything from an H-216 Albatross, and they'll go spin maybe in a T-6. They'll get all sorts of different experiences so that they know how to handle new aircraft.
So a little bit more about the Test Pilot School as you get another live shot of Lancaster. Just a gorgeous shot by our crew.
So one of the things that we're doing in the air show, this hybrid air show event, is and sorry you had to be here with people like Dave and me on the ground at 0 knots and 0 feet above the ground level, Dan. But we have a C-17 flying out there today with a media team on it, so they can kind of get to experience what life is like or flight is like on one of those aircraft. I don't know if it's that specific C-17 there, but it is one of the C-17s that we had a media request on and for. And that type of involvement and partnership with not just the media but public affairs and everybody else involved is really important and really a crucial part of bringing the air show to the people and really foot stomping how vital the science, technology, engineering, and math is to our nation and to our service. And one of the things that I think is really important as we think about this, when people hear Edwards and they think test pilot school, they immediately think airplanes. But test pilot school has grown a new leaf in the recent past, and I'll let Dave take it from there.
Okay, well, thanks, sir. The test professional school involves not only just pilots, but we have engineers, which make up a large part of the class. We have combat systems officers and RPA pilots. So it's a broad spectrum. But one new leaf that I really wanted to talk about, which is exciting, and it kind of grows from the fact that we were thanking the American public about their support for the warfighter. And I think they need to know that the face of the American warfighter continues to evolve. It's changing. And recently there was a stand-up of the United States Space Force, happened a few months ago, and Test Pilot School is really excited to be involved along with U.S. Space Force Test and Evaluation Directorate, Space and Missile Systems, and our partner APSI Aerospace and Defense, a contractor located right outside of Washington, D.C., as well as the Air Force Test Center and 412 Test Wing, to develop a new space test fundamentals course. So we're chartered with putting together a 3-month course that's going to be the first really rigorous approach to develop the manpower and the capability for our folks to develop this emerging technology, especially in the space fighting domain.
And you got a great shot there from Bakersfield and some folks out on the hill watching the air show. So great to see as we're back here at Broadcast Central. Dan Hawkins, the commander of the 412th Test Wing and Edwards Air Force Base, Brigadier General Matt Heiger, and Dave Vanoy, the technical director at the Test Pilot School, is with us as well. And so it's really exciting when you talk about space. Like, obviously with the buildup of the U.S. Space Force, it is a Department of the Air Force priority to help build the U.S. Space Force, and they're starting to stand up. And it's really interesting, sir, but how, the Space Force has really actively decided to do things the way that Space Force is going to do it, not necessarily the Air Force. So, helping be a part of them building up how they're going to do business, it's really exciting times.
It is a super exciting time. I'll tell you that one of the things that General Brown has really pushed on the United States Air Force is that an Air Force priority is to make sure the stand-up of the Space Force goes well. There's a combat synergy. There's a sibling synergy there that we have to get right. I think Dave was talking about something that is something we are definitely getting right, the stand-up of the Space Test Fundamentals curriculum at Test Professional School, and he said it right earlier. We haven't just trained pilots there in 40 years. And so the fact that we're training space professionals is very appropriate. I have said for quite a while that at U.S. Air Force TPS, we teach test. We teach test principles, and those principles are domain agnostic. So the same basic fundamentals of risk management and technology maturation and having science hit the reality of physics applies in all domains. It applies if you're fighting on land, fighting at sea, under the sea. U.S. Air Force TPS has been very focused on what you do above the air, but it also is now applicable, and we're expanding the curriculum to cover what happens above the air, out in the upper atmosphere, and the part of it that connects it all, the communications, which we would call cyber and electronic warfare and spectrum warfare as well. All of that needs to be tested, and all of that testing needs to be done by test professionals that speak a common language and understand the basics of risk management and other exquisite things that we can bring for the warfighter.
What are we seeing on the screen, sir?
Well, you're seeing an F-16. You're seeing
yes.
an F-16 taxiing. That is, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, an aircraft near and dear to my heart. I do want to pivot real quick to Dave is a very humble person by nature, and he doesn't brag on himself much. But, Dave, I know you got a blue patch not just on students around here, but you got one yourself. You want to talk about life as a civilian and your attendance at school?
Absolutely. I'm not going to talk about myself much, but an opportunity that we've worked hard is to create the ability to have civilian engineers come through test pilot school and to go on to a career where they're acting as test conductors, dedicated crew members executing tests, and have a really exciting career in T&E. We try to bring in about one civilian student a class, so that's about 2 per year that we're working for. And we've been doing that successfully for the last decade. As a matter of fact, we're doing candidate evaluations this week. Yesterday I sat down and interviewed 2 of our candidates, civilian engineers from Eglin. So we bring students in from across the entire Air Force Test Center enterprise. And we've been doing that successfully for a while.
And so I'm curious about when the hiring, so we do a lot of training here and we bring in students, but tell us about the staff and the makeup of the cadre at the test pilot school. Are they all active duty military? Are there civilian flight instructors? Obviously you're a flight test engineer. What is the makeup at the test pilot school?
Well, the makeup reflects what we have across Edwards. We have active duty military, pilots and engineers. We have civilians, pilots and engineers. We have support staff from program managers to contract officers to human resource specialists to admin folks. We have dedicated contractors from CalSpan and from other organizations that they teach academics, they fly sorties, they do a whole host of things. So that the makeup is really diverse. But the one thing they have in common is, I tell you, Dan, it's humbling every day. They're all so freaking smart. You know, I learn something new every day. You cannot walk down the halls of Air Force Test Pilot School without getting engaged in some unique conversations about things that span the whole spectrum of flight test.
Well, we certainly appreciate you stopping by, and I think you're going to be here tomorrow, so we're going to have some more time tomorrow to talk through some more about the Test Pilot School. We appreciate your time today.
Dan, I wouldn't miss it. Thanks for having me, and we can stay here all day and talk about TPS if you'd like.
So much fun, and so I think we've had maybe a few questions on social media, sir, but I kind of wanted to talk about what this helmet is. You see the live shot there out of Lancaster. Looks like a C-17 there, but this helmet that's on the table here in front of us when they flip back there, as you see, again, the C-17 looks like flying out of Lancaster, trying to see where they're actually headed to. Rosamond and Mojave, you're next to see the C-17, so if you're watching us on the live broadcast, make sure you head outside and catch the C-17 live. So
the other thing that just happened right before we cut to that live shot of Lancaster is we had a 2 ship of F-35s flying over Bakersfield. So we're catching the whole west route as we showed you earlier today, and I'm confident that we'll pop that up again as we move through the broadcast and show folks what the route is. Those of you that are in the center of the Aerospace Valley at Lancaster, Palmdale, you'll have the privilege of seeing a slightly different route, but some of these airplanes again tomorrow as we have a route that goes a little bit more east and north of here. But today, Bakersfield, these aircraft are for you as we reach out and take the hybrid air show to the people in 2020 from Edwards.
And we will get back to it, but we only have a limited amount of time, and I really want to talk to our next guest who has joined us on set, and that is Captain Carson Roberts. He is the Deputy Branch Chief for In-Space Propulsion Branch at the Air Force Research Laboratory, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. So
tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do at the Air Force Research Lab?
Yeah, so I'm the Deputy Branch Chief at the Air Force Research Laboratory. I'm also an engineer, and we focus there specifically on in-space propulsion technologies. There's several actually different directorates across Air Force Research Laboratory. There's aerospace systems, there's space vehicles, there's munitions, and several others. But what we really focus on at the research lab is looking at groundbreaking technology and looking at that to research it and develop it and transition it to the next phase for the warfighter.
And so I'm kind of curious about your Air Force story. So tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get commissioned, and then what did you do before landing here at Edwards Air Force Base?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a Southern boy at heart. So I grew up in Houston, Texas. So California is a lot different than Houston, but I actually got to the Air Force through football. I got the chance to get recruited for football, which is a really cool opportunity to play at the Air Force Academy. From there, I got to learn about the great opportunities the Air Force provides. I studied mechanical engineering there, went to get a master's, and then now I've been here for a little over 2 years, being able to work with some really smart people and just learn a lot about new technologies.
Yeah, so, and it's really interesting how the research laboratory fits in with the overall Edwards mission, sir.
It is. I'll say pre-pandemic, if I were to ask Carson, hey, where do you work? He would point at a ridge over here. So you want to talk a little bit about the lab or the site?
Yeah, definitely. So we're about 30 minutes east of Edwards, and Edwards is a pretty remote base as it is, but we get to do some pretty cool work there. Specifically, it's the AFRL Rocket Lab is the nickname for where we work. We do rocket propulsion testing, solid rocket motors, engines, and the branch I work in is specifically in-space propulsion branch. So looking at chemical propulsion thrusters, so high thrust, and then also high efficiency thrusters for satellites on orbit to enhance mission capabilities. We look at orbit maintenance. We have just the ability to get away from threats or debris while in orbit. So it's just a wide variety of things that we can enable with propulsion.
And so when you look at the mission of Edwards, what is it about the science, technology, engineering, math discipline? What is it that really draws you in?
Right, so I'm a big numbers guy. So being able to have the chance to work engineering active duty is a great way to do that. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we have some really smart people at AFRL, and being able to experiment with new things and really focus on those future technologies that will enhance our competitive edge over our adversaries and our state-of-the-art of the future systems. Like, that's a really cool chance to get to do that with the research and development environment that we work in.
And being, and I don't want to say we're old, sir, but being a little bit younger than
I might be. You're plenty young, Dan. So
being a little bit younger than us, what was it about the Air Force that drew you in and made you want to serve?
Yeah, I think it was just an opportunity to be a part of something bigger than yourself. I may have been a kind of a weird kid. I grew up making my bed all the time. My parents didn't really have to tell me to do that. So that was a big draw for me. You don't have to choose out what to wear, so that was a cool thing. But really just the opportunity to be a part of something bigger than yourself, to serve. That's really, I mean, my granddad was in the military, so just being able to follow in his footsteps was just a great honor.
So you said you're a big numbers guy, so I'm guessing straight A's in math all the way through?
A's and B's. A's. I think I had a couple of B's, so I'm not anything special. So.
Well, so let me disagree with that. I'll tell you, Captain Roberts is something special, as are all Air Force officers. But I tell you, one of the things that he drives home personally at a slightly different place in career than I am right now is that you heard me say it earlier on the broadcast, but this is a service, and frankly, this is the Department of the Air Force that takes math as a language and education in technical fields very, very seriously. It's a part of our culture. It's a part of our team. You don't have to hide the fact that you enjoy geekery in that. And I have not worked in the same places you have, Carson, and you have not worked in many of the places I have, but I bet you found that to be true in that culture. And that is very empowering and enlightening. And if you have a couple thoughts on that or examples of where you may have been a little embarrassed previously, but now it's just the normal water cooler talk.
Right, definitely. I think my wife can attest to. I have a lot of spreadsheets, so that's just everyday life for me. I embrace it. It's just one of those things that just kind of ticks with me. But I mean, I think in general with the Air Force and also the Space Force, you have the chance as an Air Force officer, Space Force officer, leader to have an understanding of multiple different systems, and having some of that technical background and expertise can really enable that. And definitely in a research environment, you're definitely at home with engineering, and even across the Air Force, everywhere is pretty open to engineering and S&T brains.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I'll point out, I think the Air Force doesn't quite have the corner on the market. The Department of the Air Force doesn't, but we have a pretty heavy corner on the combined markets of people that are technically smart, technically savvy, are not afraid of learning and not afraid of going out, and that are used to being a part of high-functioning, high-performing teams. There's a lot to be said for leadership in the military. Leading technical teams is a unique challenge that I think the Air Force does very well. Carson is in a great example of that. Most of the folks that we have are used to thinking of leadership as leadership from on point or leadership from out front. Love that sound of freedom, man. Another tower flyby, which I can't wait to brag on a little more as an F-16 blasts by us here. But the leading from within a team, I think, is one thing that we do a lot. We don't talk about enough. And with that second F-16, Carson, you want to talk about the combination of being a super geek and being a great leader and a team player at the same time?
Right. I think it's just most importantly taking care of people. That's the most important thing. So being able to apply some engineering skills to our jobs personally and leading different technical programs is great. But being able to work with folks and know that you actually genuinely care about them is the most important thing. And whether that you have a designated team under you or you're just peer-to-peer leadership, I think it's something that even in life, in the Air Force especially, you see it, but then also all other facets, that's a really important skill.
Well, sir, we certainly appreciate your time today and stopping by, and I think we're going to talk to you tomorrow as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
So Captain Carson Roberts from the Air Force Research Laboratories, you get a live shot there of the Edwards Air Force Base flight line, another tower flyby, sir. So another opportunity for some sounds of freedom. And they got me on the last one. They kind of surprised me. I looked away.
Yeah, they. I tell you. So while we're pulling in here, one of our senior reps from the mission partner NASA. One of the things that is really interesting to look at the lake bed that NASA shares and has for decades shared with Edwards. There are a lot of markings out there. One of the things that we're referencing right now, and we've talked about it a little bit, but I'll get on it a little more here, is tower flyby. So we measure altitude and speed in an airplane based on the difference in pressure at 2 points in the airplane. And I'm not going to go any deeper in geekery on that. But how do you know the measurement is right? Is an important question, right? So when I'm flying at night, or any of us are riding at night or in the weather in an airplane, we'd kind of like to know that the pilots up front know how high they are above the ground and how fast they're going so they can operate safely. One of the ways that we innovatively and agilely figured out how to do that here at Edwards, not just as an Air Force, but as a nation, was we calibrated those air data systems by flying over a very specific line over this desert, and it's called the tower flyby line. And it's called the tower flyby line because you actually fly by a tower, and in that tower there's an engineer that can, through geometry, so math is a language, figure out exactly how high you are above the ground at a certain airspeed. And so at a ready mark, and there's a U-2 flying over Lancaster right now. That's one of the NASA birds that are joining us today. Ready mark, you capture what the airplane told you it was doing with what the airplane was actually doing, and you compare the two to make the corrections required. Now, we can do that today in other ways and other calibrations, but it's still an important thing to spot check those models and those data, and that's what we do on the tower flyby line. With that, I'll let our NASA rep talk about one of his beautiful historical airplanes that are flying over Lancaster right now.
So joining us on set, Kevin Rohr, the Chief of Strategic Communications at the NASA Neil Armstrong Flight Research Center here at Edwards. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, doing great. This is just an amazing experience out here. I want to first thank you and the general and the whole team that's putting this on. It's just what an amazing event. It's a shame we couldn't actually be at Fox Field doing a real air show with 100,000 people. But what is the next best thing? It's taking the message to them. So perfect. Love this opportunity.
Yeah, so as we get another great shot here of a tower flyby, and looks like, I don't know if they're about to land.
Yeah, that's an F-16 on final approach there, about to touch down.
Yeah, so Kevin, tell us a little bit about the NASA facility here at the Armstrong Flight Research Center. 74 years you guys have been here. What do you do?
Oh, for 75 years, we've been experiencing great partnerships with the Air Force, with our community partners in the Aerospace Valley and the industry. But we have been advancing flight. We are looking at technology and science, applying it to flight, and making flight safer, making it more efficient, making it more environmentally friendly. That's what we do. Go all the way back to the early days of the X-1 program, where we were partners, through the 70s with putting winglets on a KC-135, great partnership there, to even today with some of the autonomous flight systems we've been working on, keeping our pilots safe.
I want to bridge back to history real fast. One of the first airplanes that really I found fascinating as a child was the X-15.
Yes.
Right? Another great example of partnership between Armstrong, which wasn't Armstrong Flight Research Center then because that was pre-then, but what is now Armstrong Flight Research Center.
And a little piece of trivia that most folks don't realize, before Neil Armstrong actually put foot on the moon, he flew out here. And he flew the X-15, and he had a couple of flights out there. He then went on to a different calling to become an astronaut, and I think we all know the rest of the story.
Turned out pretty well.
He did a pretty good career, yes, sir.
And sir, and you guys can both expound on it, but I've heard you reference it more as an alliance with NASA.
Absolutely. So the Air Force, specifically the 412 Test Wing and NASA Armstrong Flight Research Center, are more than mission partners. We actually have a formal alliance with a big capital A, and we could go over example after example after example of how that alliance benefits both of these government agencies. But most importantly, I think the thing that we do here on this lake bed, in this facility, and combined between our two places really benefits the nation and all of our international partners as well. I'll tell you a couple of the fascinating things that I am watching as a close aboard observer that's happened at Armstrong Flight Research Center right now are potentially getting back into supersonic transport. So there's technology demonstration there, and there are a couple others if you want to hit on those.
Sure. If you haven't heard of the plane, it's X-59 Quest is the name of the aircraft. Lockheed Martin down at Plant 42 is working on it right now. They're building it for us. They will soon be going into the flight test stage. And then it's not about going fast. We know how to go fast. You know how to go fast. But can you fly at supersonic speeds and not make a loud noise? I know we hear all the noise of the jets taking off here. That's the sound of freedom, and we love that. But when you're flying over communities, they don't necessarily want to hear it, especially over land and over big cities at nighttime and while they're trying to have dinner. So a quiet supersonic jet is one of the key things we're doing. And it's not just for NASA and the Air Force benefit, it's for everybody's benefit. That technology will be shared by the world and by industry. Aeronautics is one of the biggest industries in this country from a gross domestic output, so the country benefits greatly from it.
And NASA recently really on record saying that we're going to go back to the moon. How exciting is that for NASA as a whole and specifically here at your facility?
Yeah, you probably didn't see my face get a really big smile. That is super, super exciting. While we don't have a huge role in the Artemis program, which is getting astronauts back to the moon, develop a firm outpost there as a bridge point to get them onto Mars. And it's not just NASA, it's taken the whole community, international and national, with our aerospace industry. Couldn't be more proud of the work the agency is doing. A lot of technologies that we've developed here are going into lunar landing and landing on the moon. There's a vehicle called the Lunar Landing Research Vehicle that was built and tested out here so the astronauts could practice landing on the moon. Some of that technology could still be used on the next lunar landing.
So the theme of this Aerospace Valley Air Show, this hybrid edition, has really been STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and how that relates to careers in aviation. So understanding that STEM is kind of a requirement to some degree to work in fields such as space exploration and what you do at NASA. What are some of the types of attributes that you look for in potential applicants to work for NASA?
Well, of course, we want the brightest and the best out there, but we also want people with passion. We want people that understand the aerospace industry and the space industry and aeronautics. We want people that believe in it. And we are a big part of STEM, getting the mathematicians, the engineers. We also have accountants. We have public affairs people. I don't have a STEM degree, but I play one on TV sometimes, like today. But we also have all of support personnel as well, that some are degreed, some aren't, but it's the passion for aeronautics, it's the passion for science, it's the passion to be the best you can.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that if you have not lived in the Aerospace Valley that you don't realize, it is not just Edwards Air Force Base, and it is not Edwards Air Force Base and its mission partners. It is literally the entire valley. One of the things that NASA has for that they employ, they have airplanes, so they also have airplane maintainers. And a good friend of mine that helped me work on an airplane, a private airplane, a while back, happens to be one of your maintenance folks. And that type of common community and interest in aviation, all things technology, is really prevalent in the Aerospace Valley writ large, not just on the installation that is Edwards.
Well, and Kevin, we really appreciate you stopping by, and I think we're going to have some more time tomorrow to talk with you a little bit more about NASA and their alliance with Edwards and everything that's happening here. So we really appreciate you taking some time out. It sounds pretty awesome to work at NASA right now.
Oh, it's not a bad gig at all, and I really want to appreciate your guys' time for having me, so thank you very much.
Absolutely, and my biggest debt of gratitude to NASA is they made this a joint air show. You know, if it hadn't been for the NASA jets that are flying out of Plant 42 and off the ramp here at Edwards today, it would have been a good air show, but it wouldn't have been the great joint one that it is, getting the U-2, the Hornet, and a couple of airplanes airborne. So pass back to all of the folks at NASA, including the air crew, my gratitude as well for joining us.
Absolutely, General. I'll do that. So thank you again.
Thank you.
So that was Kevin Rohrer from NASA as you get another shot above the skies of Bakersfield, California. And that's a gorgeous shot, sir, of a C-17.
It is. What a neat airplane. I'll tell you, the first time I was in Afghanistan, I rode in to Afghanistan on a C-17. and the crew put me up in the cockpit in one of the observer seats, and I got to watch them land a very large airplane, hundreds of thousands of pounds, on a very steep, what they call tactical approach into an airfield at night. It is amazing how the air crews and the airplane combine to give us that type of global reach and tactical flexibility that you see embodied right there in a C-17. What you're doing when you see an airplane like that specific one flying straight and level over the valley, doesn't even give a small glimpse as to what the capabilities are of such a gorgeous and well-designed, well-flown, and well-employed aircraft.
And that's a great illustration of, a combination crew with enlisted and officers with a wide range of STEM backgrounds coming together to complete the mission.
Absolutely. So one of the things that you have on many, but not all large airplanes, is you have officer air crew that are in the case of the C-17, the pilot, the co-pilot. They may have an augmented crew with another pilot or two, so they can do longer missions over longer days. But really, the heart of the C-17 mission is what do you carry in the airplane, what do you push out of the airplane, and what do you haul to the different places. And that is all done by our professional enlisted airmen, primarily loadmasters and or flying maintenance crew chiefs. I was on a flight, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast yesterday, on the C-17, and these two super professional, highly skilled NCOs lowered the ramp while we were flying at 180 knots over the airfield here, coordinated with the cockpit for the timing to push out the Air Force Wings of Blue jumpers on time. And those two female senior enlisted aviators and loadmasters, they do a lot more than that, but that is just a great example of how we team on an airplane like that across ranks, and another great example of the diversity that we have that is very transparent and very open and very available inside the United States Air Force.
And so all morning long we've been talking about STEM and the attributes that we look for to work in this testing and evaluation enterprise, and we're really delighted now to be joined by Justin Anthony from the Air Force Test Center,
Yes.
Civilian Personnel Specialist.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us. How cool is this?
This is awesome. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity being here. And I really want to say I want to thank our leadership for throwing this event. A couple months ago, we didn't know if this event was still going to happen. And not only is it happening, it's succeeding. And, just to give you a little perspective, my wife is a teacher here in Palmdale, and yesterday her class live streamed with some of the speakers, and she got some really good feedback back and on families, and parents are really excited about these opportunities here in the Valley. So, this is great. That, for me as a recruiter, that's the best recruiting tool you can give, is have people out there seeing what we can do and get that insight into the test center. So it's awesome.
I tell you, what you are observing, folks, right now, literally, and what folks like your wife and her class got to experience Monday through Thursday. We the enterprise, saw an opportunity and took advantage of a unique point in history where we have the overwhelming majority of kids grades pre-kindergarten all the way through some graduate students that are primarily online learning right now.
Yes.
Well, let's take the air show to them too. And so a lot of folks are under the impression that this is a Southern California broadcast online, but that's not true. It was a URL, and you can hit it from any site.
Yes.
And that has been huge. I've got friends with their kids that are enrolled in school in Montana that are watching. I have other relatives that have been in Las Vegas and other places across the nation. And our ability to take this message of what's here for the Air Force as a civilian and as an active duty member through that is also very very important. You are seeing us there, and that's how we'll be broadcasting again tomorrow. But getting out the message of what's available to you if you want to join the Air Force is one big component of that. So I'll tip over to Anthony to a little bit more on that.
So we have a variety of opportunities available through the Air Force Test Center. I manage the talent acquisition program for both Edwards, Arnold, and Eglin. And Edwards is more focused on the flight test initiative. For myself, I have some personal experience with that. I used to be an aircraft mechanic, so I got to see the flight test perspective from the front line, I guess you can say. So I get to see how what we do here directly relates to the warfighter, really. And I think what we do is amazing. And we're really looking for a lot of our young engineers who are out there watching right now to really think about Air Force civilian service as a career opportunity. I started off in aircraft maintenance, but I was able to move around, and here I am doing recruiting. So you can come in, and there's other opportunities available once you're in. If you're looking for information, you want to go to Air Force Civilian Careers, AFCivilianCareers.com. That is A as in Alpha, F as in Frank, civiliancareers.com. And there you can find a lot of information on our paid internship programs and our opportunities such as engineers, civil engineering, information technology, aircraft maintenance, you name it, financial management. We really have a lot of opportunities available out there for anybody who's interested in joining our team.
And I think it's really interesting to note, too, you talked about your experience as a maintainer, but
yes.
we're recruiting everybody from maintainers to PhD level employment as well. It covers a broad spectrum.
Correct. Yeah, so depending on the position, obviously the requirements will be different. The only requirement is to be a U.S. citizen. Other than that, the position itself will determine the specific requirement. So for a lot of our positions, you are going to require a degree. But for many other positions, we're really seeking out former military members, especially on the aircraft maintenance side. But if you don't have aircraft or former military aircraft maintenance experience, you could. We're looking for A&P graduates, which is your airframe and power plant schools. We're looking for a financial budgeting analyst through all the levels that you mentioned, whether it's a master's degree and PhD, and even for master's degrees and our graduate students, we have some paid internships that could benefit you as well. Internships themselves, there's a lot of information to them. If you go to the AF Civilian Careers website, you can grab all that information there. But yeah, there is different levels on how you can enter our workforce.
And I think it's probably an accurate description, sir, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in Air Force Materiel Command as a whole, I mean, the civilian service, the Air Force Civilian Service, so vital to what you do.
We couldn't do it without the Big A Airmen, as we refer to everybody. So a lot of folks, when they hear airman, they think of an airman rank. But I tell you, when I say airman, I mean every airman on the base, not just ones that wear a uniform. But this gentleman is wearing a uniform right next to me.
Thank you.
And it's his civilian uniform. And I love airmen that wear civilian clothes as their uniform. But we also have contractors that are on the Big A Airman team in the mission partner aspect. A lot of folks may not realize that there are careers, enlisted careers in the Air Force and the Space Force. There are officer careers in the Air Force and the Space Force. But there are also very well-defined and very well-opened careers in all the civilian ranks for Big A Airmen as well. Justin, if you want to talk to a couple career paths or a couple options you have, you've already mentioned aircraft maintenance, but any other ones you want to throw out that people might not associate with the Space Force or the Air Force for civilians?
Well, definitely information technology is really big. We're definitely looking at those skills. They have a great opportunity to move up and be a part of some programs that we have coming down the line. Financial management is something that you don't normally associate with aircraft and aviation. We're definitely seeking those skill sets as well. Civil engineering, architecture, which, you don't associate that, but civil engineering is one of our focuses right now. Really, those are probably the three biggest that are not directly associated with aircraft.
Yeah, there are a couple other career fields that are very important to me, running an installation that are almost exclusively civilian, and they fall into what we call base operations and support.
There you go.
So all the folks that maintain the buildings and create the buildings and the roads and the sewers and the power, all those trades folks that we would refer as civil engineers, but it isn't necessarily engineering. It could be trades work as well. There's also another part of running an installation, which is a kind of like a small city as well. Every city has healthcare too.
Correct.
Right? And so we have a lot of civilians that are technologically savvy, that are civilians in the medical groups across the Air Force. And there are other examples along those lines as well.
Yeah, definitely. We're looking for med experience. And one thing that I want to highlight is right now with the Air Force, we have been adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic. And with that, we're doing a lot of teleworking, which a year ago, this wasn't really that big of an option, but now a lot of us are getting these flexible work schedules and these flexible ways of still doing our job. So for a lot of people out there that are thinking about joining the Air Force, the Air Force Civilian Service, that's a really big key. I get to spend a lot more time with my family, and I'm still doing the same job that I was doing before, and I think that we're going to be sticking with this long term because the data points are showing we're actually really effective doing it. So I really want to throw that out there as well.
Yeah, and so I'm going to interrupt you here, Justin. We're about to see it over the skies, but
yes.
Speaking about long term, there's a B-52. What a long term asset that is for the Air Force. And here it comes, making a little noise for us along the flat line. If that doesn't make you excited to be in the Air Force or a part of the Air Force or live in this valley, I literally don't know what will. What a glorious sound and sight.
Yes. That was my plane. I was a bomber mechanic.
You were a bomber mechanic.
there
you go. Banged a few knuckles and got a little grease under the fingernails.
Oh,
huh?
yeah. It also made me want to move up.
Yeah, I understand, right?
So awesome. And Justin, we really appreciate your time
Thank
today.
you
And I think you'll be joining us again tomorrow.
Yes.
So we can talk more about opportunities. But thanks for coming out today. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So that was Justin Anthony from the Air Force Civilian Service Talent Acquisition. As you saw there, we got the great shot of the B-52 Stratofortress. Never gets old, does it?
It does not. No, it really doesn't. I tell you, there are a lot of things that happen at the center of the aerospace testing universe, which is Edwards, but really the large community around it that are super exciting and super meaningful. I remember one of my previous assignments here. I walked out of my office and it was just after sunset on the ground, but the sun had just set below the horizon, so the clouds were still lit. And I was looking at an NF-104 that has some amazing history in and of itself on it in the foreground. And in the background, a missile launch had just happened out of Vandenberg Air Force Base. And so the smoke plume was up in the sunlight. And that contrast of the Joshua trees across the street, the nice cool evening air, a little breeze in the Aerospace Valley, the NF-104 with all its history, and a rocket going off out of Vandenberg, really just even thinking about that picture gives me chills today. And that is just one of those moments seared in my memory about how special this place and the people that are here are.
And so we're going to keep the recruiting theme going as Lieutenant Colonel Charles Barton, he's the commander of the 369th Recruiting Squadron, has come up and joined us. Sir, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. How are you both doing today?
We're very good. So I got to ask a question right away. With
Yes,
a name like Charles, kind of like with a name like Matthew,
Yes,
what
sir.
do you go by?
CB.
CB.
Yes,
all
sir.
right. All right.
Keep it simple.
So that's good. That's great. You can just call me sir. How's that?
Yes, sir. That works. for
All
me.
right. I appreciate that, CB. I'm thrilled you're here, and thanks for
Yes, sir.
making it from AETC and the recruiting squadron. Now, we just got done talking to a civilian recruiter about if you're interested in becoming a Big A civilian airman, what do you
Yes,
do? And then just as if we had planned it, we now can talk about active duty recruiting.
Yes,
so
sir.
that is your lane and your technical specialty. Before you get there, talk to us real quick about your background, including the kind of wings on your chest.
Yes, sir. First of all, I'm born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. 2001 graduate of the Air Force Academy. So Colonel Spaulding is actually my college roommate, if you can believe that.
No, I can believe that. I can believe that.
So it was kind of crazy to run into him here today, but I fly the RC-135. I'm a nav on the RC-135 by trade. I've done that since I came into the military, and then most recently I assumed command of the 369th Recruiting Squadron based down in Encino, where I've got 80 amazing airmen and civilians focusing on listed sessions right now.
Fantastic. So if we talked about if you want to be a civilian in the Air Force, how do you do that? But if you want to be a uniform-wearing person like either one of us in the Air Force, how do they get a hold of you, and what's the process like?
Well, it's a very simple process, and the thing I want to let everyone know is that the Air Force is recruiting people for not just simply the Air Force, but the Space Force as well. And we're looking for qualified applicants between the ages of 17 and 39 who meet, obviously, the medical requirements and the physical requirements. The best way to go about, there are numerous ways to go about it. You can just walk into your local neighborhood Air Force recruiter's office, gain some information, and talk with them about what it is that you're looking to do. And obviously, in keeping up with the technological age, the various apps out there. You have the AIM-I app, where you could actually log on to the app, create a profile. You can type in your zip code. You can find the nearest Air Force recruiter based off of where you live. And what's great about that is many recruiters you'll find are within 5 minutes or an hour away, and they're either in our metropolitan areas or in our rural areas as well. And you can talk with the recruiter based off of what it is that you're interested in doing. And we're looking for people who are, obviously, the Air Force is all about flying. We're looking to fly, fight, and win. So jobs focusing on aircraft mechanic. People who can actually either fly the plane or become aircraft mechanics. We're looking for people to become linguists. We're looking for people who work in the medical field, the legal field. So a variety of fields that are out there for anyone interested in joining the Air Force or the Space Force as well. So please, if you're interested, if you know anyone is interested, do not delay. We are hiring, and we are ready to have you suit up and join the blue.
Yeah, one of the things I'm super proud of about Air Education and Training Command is that we never flinched during the pandemic.
Right.
We kept basic military training going. We kept recruiting going because the machine can't stop. There are things that are more important than that fight, and one of them is making sure that we keep the pipeline open to recruit folks into the Air Force.
And that's really been a foundational initiative for General Webb, is fighting through this pandemic and keeping the exceptioning training and education pipelines open. And I really wanted to foot stomp what you said, sir, about the Aim High app. It's really a one-stop shop for all things recruiting, and some great features too, like you can actually let your family see a little bit of your Air Force basic military training experience through pictures in the app, but it's also really a portal to recruiters. I mean, it's such a valuable tool to what you do. But I think a lot of people maybe don't understand, how do I become an officer perhaps in the Air Force Vice? I don't want to just enlist. So how is that process different?
Okay, well, there are multiple other means in order to become an officer. Obviously, if you have the Air Force Academy or the ROTC, sort of Reserve Officer Training Corps, which you tend to find at our colleges throughout this beautiful country. And then there's obviously Officer Training School based there at Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama. So one of the minimum requirements outside of meeting the medical and the physical requirements is having a bachelor's degree. So again, you speak with some of our recruiters, they will point you in the right direction in order to make that happen. And even more so for those people who are looking to become doctors and nurses, we have a commissioning program for people in the medical side of the house. We have recruiters who are based within the group that covers our squadron, the 372nd Recruiting Group, who will be more than happy to point you in the right direction if you're looking to become a nurse or a doctor or anything in that career field as well.
Yeah, we also directly assess is the term, but we directly assess people with law degrees to become judge advocate generals. We also have a direct accession program through the recruiting squadrons for chaplains and chaplain corps as well. So if you have an advanced degree and you think, well, I don't think what I want to do is go be an airman and turn a wrench, which is a great thing and a great way to join the Air Force. If you want to do something else, I suspect we have something available to you, and the recruiting squadrons and Air Education and Training Command are a great place to do that. If you don't mind, CB, I want to pivot real quick to something that I'm gonna throw it out on the table right now. One of the things that is near and dear to my heart as a senior leader in the Air Force and somebody that's been in the Air Force for going into my third decade now, I grew up in a small town in Idaho, and the Air Force sent me to Texas and then Korea and then Alaska and Arizona, and along the way I gained a tremendous respect and admiration for, and really understanding that I didn't know I was missing on the diversity of location, experience, background, and other facets there. If you want to talk to what our recruiting looks like in diverse ways, I know the folks would appreciate hearing that.
Well, yes, sir. And the thing I will say, obviously with our previous chief of staff, indicated that having a diverse force is important in being able to be strong when it comes to combat, and we are most definitely hiring everyone. It does not matter who you are, what you look like, what your skin color is, if you're a man or a woman. The Air Force and the Space Force, we're definitely hiring, and you have people in the senior leaders of the Pentagon, senior levels of the Pentagon, who've taken a look and figured out, yes, we need to focus on underrepresented groups and minorities and women in order to get more folks into the planes, get more folks in various career fields, the best mirror what it is that our society looks like from a demographic standpoint. And so you've seen a lot of initiatives that have come forward with that, with the Aim High diversity push. You're seeing another program that's out there called Go Inspire, where we're taking general officers and having them go speak with youth and youth influencers and underrepresented groups to talk with them about the various opportunities that are out there in the Air Force. And there's a whole litany of other programs that are out there. But at the end of the day, the Air Force and the military writ large, we recognize the importance of having a diverse workforce that not only mirrors our the demographics here in the United States, but at the same time, having that diverse workforce will better enable us to get out there and to fly, fight, and win, because from a diverse workforce, diverse group of people, we have people with a diverse background, diverse mindsets who all bring something different to the table with the ultimate goal of helping us to remain superior in the air.
I tell you, the one thing that I think is a unique competitive attribute of our nation, and specifically our service in our department, is we recognize performance. And it doesn't matter where you come from or what you look like or even what your first language was or your religion. And you might be a naturalized citizen too. It's that contribution and your performance is what really matters. And I know CB agrees with me in this statement. And when I've been on teams that are a whole bunch of folks from the same background and the same thought and maybe the same gender and all those things, that team gets crushed every time by the team that has the diversity of experience and the diversity of background. And the culture that allows us to recruit that folks in and then encourage those folks to contribute and remain is really a unique thing in the Air Force. And I bet you've had the same experience.
Yes, sir.
We're going to try something 2020 here.
All right, we're going to try.
We're going to try to bring in Technical Sergeant Mike. Nope. Oh, wait, we don't have him yet. We're trying to bring in Sergeant Grutzmeicher from Bakersfield.
Okay.
But we don't have him yet. But we're going to try. We thought we had him for a second.
Yes, sir.
But they're going to let me know when he's ready.
That's all right. This is test, and a successful test sometimes results in a do it again, right?
There you go.
So no problem. Yeah, you're in a great place.
Failing forward.
I tell you, I'm happy to be a beta tester. I love it all the time. So back to the question, CB. When you talk about how inclusive we are with those of different thoughts and different backgrounds in your experience.
Well, from my experience, sir, I've been in situations where I'm the only one in the room that looks like me, and I've been in situations where I've been in the room where everybody looks like me, and every combination you can think of thereof. At the end of the day, I definitely believe that it's all about dignity and respect, treating one another with dignity and respect, and remembering that, especially if you wear the uniform of the United States Air Force or the Space Force or any of our other branches of the military, we're all here to fight the same mission. We're all here to try to keep this country safe. And just remember that regardless of whether or not someone comes from a very rich background or their background is poor, black, white, Asian, Latino, man, woman, LGBT, what have you, what matters is that you treat them with dignity and respect, and you listen to them, and that they listen to you, and you work through your differences in order to succeed. If you can work through your differences and succeed and listen and learn, that goes a long way into helping to overcome some of the problems, unfortunately, we're seeing here in the country right now, and the things that we can do in order to keep this Air Force strong, keep this country strong, and move forward.
Yeah, I tell you, a great example, and it's a little bit dramatized, but there is a fantastic movie that I think is very appropriate right now that really hits home, resonates with me. CB, if you have another example too, I'll take it. But Hidden Figures is a great example, and it's a great example for many reasons, right? For those of you that haven't watched it, I highly encourage you to watch the movie. It's just a good movie about a very exciting period in American history from the space perspective, but a very troubling period in American history from race relations. And so watching those two merge in reality in the Hidden Figures movie is a great learning experience and a great thing to watch. And I will tell you, as a senior leader in today's Air Force and a leader period in the nation, the thing that I learned, and the lesson not just from that movie but from lessons like that, is if the character played by Kevin Costner had not had the brains and the talent, those women that were his calculators,
right,
that all also happened to be black and African Americans. If he hadn't had that female group to provide the additional talent to his white male engineers, we wouldn't have made it to the moon. And that lesson of inclusion and that lesson of taking everyone in there where they can contribute best, it helped the space race. It's helping us today, and I think that's a clear guiding light as we move forward in the service, as you recruit, as we lead, and as we all contribute to the competition for America.
All right, I'm being told that we're going to try to bring in Tech Sergeant Mike Grutzmeicher from Bakersfield.
All right, test point number 2.
Can you hear us, sir?
I can. There might be a little bit of a delay, but I can hear you.
Well, you're on here, and of course Colonel Barton is here with us, the commander of the 369th Recruiting Squadron. But tell us a little bit about your mission out in Bakersfield, and if applicants are interested in joining the Air Force in Bakersfield, how can they do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been out here for about 3 years doing enlisted accessions recruiting with a couple of my counterparts, Technical Sergeant King and Sergeant Bonner down at the Bakersfield Recruiting Office. And yeah, if anyone's interested in joining, easiest thing they can do is hop on their phone, look up the Air Force recruiter in the area. They'll get our office phone number and give us a call.
And I'm real curious, and me and General Heiger talked about this earlier this morning, but about some of the benefits that are available for those who are interested in joining the Air Force. What are some of the, maybe those top line benefits for a career in the United States Air Force?
I think a lot of the benefits are kind of well known amongst people, all the health benefits and pay and advancement opportunities and all that. And that's something a recruiter can really talk at length with anyone that's interested about. But I know for me personally, I just found a lot of benefit in the work that I did and how rewarding it was. Getting to see all the planes fly overhead today. I used to do maintenance on those, and it's always really rewarding when you saw them take off and land, because you know that the work that you did made that happen. And there's so many rewarding career fields in the Air Force like that. So for me, that was a big benefit, just seeing your hard work actually paying off, and then all the educational benefits and pay and medical coverage. It's just kind of icing on the cake.
Sergeant Grutzmacher, Brigadier General Matt Heiger, I'm the commander at Edwards. Thanks for joining us. I'll tell you, one of the things that I found fascinating about joining the Air Force, I'm not going to ask you how old you were, but probably about that long ago, are the places that I've been and seen and been stationed. You want to talk a couple about your highlights there and maybe things that surprised you?
Sergeant Grutzmacher, did you hear General Heiger's question?
I think he asked how long ago.
Oh, how long ago did I join the Air Force?
That's a good question too, but
yeah,
along
I
the
joined.
way, go ahead.
I'm sorry, yeah, a little bit of a delay. We're tripping over each other. I joined about 10 years ago when I was 24. So coming out of high school, I tried out the civilian job market a little bit, went to junior college, and then decided I wanted to do something else, do a little bit of traveling, and kind of get a career started.
And in the last 10 years, where's the Air Force sent you stations and maybe a couple capstone TDYs or deployments?
Oh, man, it's been outstanding. I spent the first 6 years of my career out at Cannon Air Force Base as a part of Air Force Special Operations Command. So I got to go on 3 deployments, all to Afghanistan. And then going to and from, I got to see all parts of the world, Bermuda, Portugal, Greece, Romania, Germany, England a couple of times, Iceland.
Well, looks like we may have frozen up there.
I started out at here in Southern California. It's been great.
Well, Sergeant Grutzmacher, we want to say thank you for your time, and we're going to let you get back to doing your job out there and recruiting the airmen we need for tomorrow.
All right. Thank you guys so much for having me.
All right, thank you. And Colonel Barton, as we get ready to wrap up this segment, we really want to say thank you. And again, maybe if you could just touch on it again, if someone's interested in reaching out, how can they do that?
As to piggyback off of what Sergeant Grutzmacher said, you can obviously look online. A lot of people are familiar with Google. You can take advantage of technology, use the Aim High app, and type in your zip code. You can get in contact with your local recruiter, or you can just go by one of the recruiting offices there. Just walk in and talk with the recruiter. We'll provide you top-notch customer service and help you to achieve your dreams, whether that be in the Air Force or the Space Force. So if you're looking to join, don't delay. We're ready. We're hiring. So come on board.
Thank you very much, sir. Aim High app. Download it now.
That's right.
In the App Store. As you get a shot there of the C-17 coming back to Edwards.
Yeah, it's been a big mainstay of the show so far. You're going to see a lot of it tomorrow as well. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize about the C-17 is that, like many Air Force airplanes, we designed them around a mission, not just in the what is in the art of the possible, but what do we need it to do. And the C-17 is large enough and can lift enough that you can drive a main battle tank into the C-17 and fly it nonstop to where it's needed in combat. And that was one of the driving factors for the size and the range and the air refueling capability of the C-17. Another important driving factor in the size and capability of the C-17 is that we have the ability to fold the rotor blades on many U.S. Army helicopters and also carry one of those directly where it's needed. Now, full disclosure, we don't typically transport large armor or other aircraft on C-17s, but if we need to, we can. They are often the movement of people and more critical supplies, and a lot of folks don't realize they also move a lot of our fuel around the areas of responsibility around the world. You know, that airplane right there can carry more fuel than the heaviest F-16 I've ever flown, and it doesn't need that much fuel to get where it's going. So instead of taking gas at some of its locations downrange, it will actually leave gas at some of its locations downrange, and that minimizes the number of times we have to buy gas from the local economy and or potentially run fuel trucks over some less than friendly territory. So C-17 is a great airplane. It's been a great asset for the United States and many international partners as well.
And we're delighted now to be joined on set by perhaps, I don't know, one of the most important people in the 412 Test Wing, the Vice Commander, Colonel Laz Gordon. Sir, how are you?
How you doing? This is good.
Good, and 6 degrees of separation, but we met when you were working for AFWorks.
Yep.
I don't know if you remember that from Air Education and Training Command, but I see you're wearing orange today, so that seems to have been a theme today. So.
It is. It absolutely is. Dave Van Hoy gave us the lecture on Orange and Edwards, and then I'll let the audience decide who's out of uniform.
And so tell us a little bit about your background, sir. You kind of have a unique background and some really great operational experience that you bring here to the table.
Yeah, you bet. So, again, I go by Laz. That's my call sign. First name's really Randy, but I like to tell folks that I've had this Forrest Gump-like career in the Air Force. So one of the things I've really enjoyed about serving in the Air Force is that you can have a variety of different career paths. Everyone gets wrapped around the axle about being a pilot or just doing one thing, but in reality, there are just a lot of different things that you can do, and so my career is kind of testament to that. So I've flown a lot of different airplanes. I got a chance to go to academia and get a PhD. I got a chance to serve as a presidential fellow. I worked a lot of cool stuff in DARPA, right, and it's been a fascinating career, and all that is just one Air Force career that's available to anybody, which is really spectacular. So people think of the military, and we kind of get typecast into one way of being, but in reality, there are just a number of things you can do, while you're serving here. So all those careers, all those different things, they've always taught me something. And I've learned and had a chance to meet folks that have just really humbled me and have just been really impressed to serve with. And to me, that's really one of the cool things, really, is just the folks that we get to serve with every day.
And with the theme of this Aerospace Valley Air Show, hybrid edition, if you will, being the STEM aspect. Tell us a little bit about your educational background, including the fact that you have a PhD and how that's helped you operationally in assignments such as when you were in the Indo-PACOM theater, in our Pacific theater.
You bet. So one of my previous bosses used to say that we are the Air Force, so we have all of the cool domains. So we have, cyber and we have air. We used to have space, but now we have Space Force, right, which is an offshoot from the Air Force, and there's a lot of close ties with that. So because all of our domains are brand new, relatively speaking, right? I mean, man has fought on sea and fought on land for forever, but the airplane is only something roughly a little over a century old, cyber and space even younger than that. So because of that, we are an extraordinarily technical service. The only way you operate in those domains is by actually having real competence across those things. So at the Air Force Academy, I got a chance to study aerospace engineering. For me, the reason why I did that is I was always in love with airplanes, fascinated by airplanes. I would ride on big airliners when I was a young kid, and I'd look outside right at takeoff, and I'd see all this cloud kind of form over the wing, and I'd wonder how something that big could get airborne. And even more, I wondered how an engine really operated, right? Like, how would you just take normal air, somehow light it on fire, and at the end of it, you had all this additional thrust to be able to get an airplane that big. So I always liked the idea of the technology and understanding the technology, but I always understood the poetry of it all, the artisan of it all, right? And so I really wanted to learn both sides of that. So I studied aerospace engineering, I studied propulsion, I studied mathematics, and I got those for my undergrad and for my master's degree. But then because of the poet in me, the PhD is a liberal arts PhD. I wanted the ability to understand the technical side of it, but then I also wanted the ability to be able to communicate the why, to be able to mesh those two. So some people are left-brained and other people are right-brained, and I tend to think of myself as corpus callosum, right? So I'm right in the middle. being able to look at both sides of it.
And I think it's interesting today, and not to say that the airmen of yesteryear never wondered about the why, but it seems like as every day goes on, as every year goes on, we really strive to understand the why.
Yeah, I could not agree more with you there, Dan. I tell you, one of the things that the Air Force has done it for a very long time. The Army coined a phrase about 10 years ago called Mission Command. But Colonel Gordon and I have been doing that since the time we were lieutenants, right? You become an aircraft commander the first time you go solo in pilot training. Right now, you're not always the aircraft commander. You're not always the mission commander, but you understand what it's like to be on point, take the information you have available, and make those decisions. And to make good decisions and align with the other folks that are also simultaneously making decisions, you have to understand the higher headquarters intent. That higher headquarters intent may be the four-ship flight lead, or it may be the Chief of Staff of the Air Force or the Secretary of Defense. Yep. And so understanding intent is really understanding and being able to answer, okay, I know what you need me to do, but why?
Yeah.
And that decision space is really important. And I tell you, when I read Accelerate, Change, or Lose, and General Brown was pretty clear, we should never abbreviate that or he'll come hunt us down. It has a different resonance with me, but Laz, what do you think when you think about that or the National Defense Strategy as to the why?
Yeah. The why is, and this happened to me in my previous job when I got assigned to a place called Pacific Command. And when I was there, for those not familiar, it's a little bit of a hardship tour. It's in Hawaii. So you're in this command, but you look and you have pretty much everything from India all the way over to the coast of California. So it is a ginormous, almost over 50% of the Earth's surface. And it just so happens that geographic area has what we called at the time near-peer rival nations. Places like China, places like Russia, places like North Korea, even a little bit, some interactions, if you will, with Iran. And what I will always remember from day one, I walked in all eager, ready to learn what it meant to be a Pacific Command and to be an officer there. And if you've ever seen that show King of the Hill, the cartoon King of the Hill, and Hank's granddad, or is about this tall and like real burly and just beady little eyes, whatever. We had a guy at Pacific Command that looked exactly that way. And he literally grabbed me, right, by the scuff of my flight suit and kind of gave me if you haven't served in the military before 1989, you have no idea what it means to go up against a peer nation that is competitive, that has a reason and a lot of technology and money behind that. And really what he was saying is that guys in my generation, we grew up in a world in which it was counterinsurgency, which going after terrorists, whatever, but that's a lot of different state than the old Cold War days, Ronald Reagan days of Soviet Union versus the United States. So when I think of accelerate change, what I think about is that we are in a dead knocked set kind of competition where if we don't do it, that doesn't prevent the adversary from doing the same thing. So if we don't compete, we lose, right? We get behind and further away.
And what are we looking at, sir? That's a NASA aircraft there.
So that is one of the few fighter aircraft. It's an F-18.
Okay.
Yeah, that's flown by NASA. It's an aerospace research vehicle there. I don't have any Hornet time. Laz, I don't know if that's in your resume or not. I'll let him talk about it.
I don't really know much about the Hornet other than it primarily used by the Navy, and I know that they're coming out with a new variant, I think it's called the Super Hornet.
Yep, you bet. So the Hornet is about the closest equivalent in the Air Force to what we have in the F-16. It is a multi-role, can do anything, right, kind of platform. Beautiful, beautiful airplane. I got a chance to fly it with the Navy at the Navy Test Pilot School for a couple of hours. And what really impressed me about the airplane is that it flies exquisitely when it's slow speed. It is such a beautiful handling airplane when you're at what we call high angle of attack and at very, very low speeds. I made the mistake once of getting into a dogfight against an F-18. We were training together, and the Eagle is a very beautiful airplane, flies well, but really not so much slow speed. But that's where the F-18 is really, really good. So at a certain point in the dogfight, I just forgot that because I was so amazed at how well it maneuvered behind me. And even though he totally gunned me, it was worth it just to watch an airplane just maneuver that beautifully slow. So when I got a chance to fly it, that's what I really wanted to try, practice.
That is the beauty of the careers and especially, sir, the opportunities here at Edwards to kind of be in that testing and evaluation and fly different variants. And we mentioned before, I know you've flown approximately 40 different aircraft. But, sir, we had Colonel Barton on from recruiting just a little bit ago, and I wanted to ask you about diversity and specifically talking about the Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen's legacy.
Yep.
Their story is pretty well chronicled, but what do you think that legacy talks to today's Air Force?
Yeah, I tend to think of diversity from a lot of different perspectives, right? There's the obvious one, which is skin color. That's the one that everyone kind of gloms onto because it's the one that we can visually understand. But you think in terms of diversity of thought, diversity of background, all those things are kind of what make a force really, really strong. There's a lot of good research and a lot of good evidence that shows if you don't have diverse teams, you're going to lose, right? So reference the previous discussion of accelerate change. We need that in our force today. Specifically to the Tuskegee Airmen and kind of what that means to me personally. When I was a kid, the HBO series came out starring Lawrence Fishburne or whatever, and it was basically this chronicle of the Tuskegee Airmen story, which I thought was a really beautiful telling of it, because if I look and I go, well, what does it mean to be African American in America? What does it mean to be an officer in that way? The one theme I see consistently all the way through is that you make a way where there is no way, right? Period, dot. And so when I think of the Tuskegee Airmen, I think of a group of folks who wanted to serve their nation and had to fight it on two fronts. They had to fight the World War II front like every other person that served in the military at that time, but then they also had to fight their own nation just for the honor and the privilege to be able to fight and die for their nation. But they were considered less than human, subhuman. So when I think about them, and I got a chance to meet two of them. One of them was, at the time, General Benjamin Davis, which at the time he was Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Davis, the commander of the Tuskegee Airmen. And when I met him, both of them, I'll tell the second story as well, but when I met him, it was this really hot day, much hotter than what it was right now. We're all sweating. We're in our service dress. And when I'm looking at him, he's walking around. And by this point, he's very frail, very much into his 90s or so. But he took the time to walk to every single one of us and shake our hand and say thank you, which coming from a man like that, that really means a lot. So that's story one. Story two was the other one that I met was Lee Archer, who is the only African-American ace. So he shot down 5 Messerschmitts in World War II. He shot down 3 of them in one day, which really, as a fighter pilot, that makes me super jealous of the fact that he got 3 in one day, and here
Amen.
I am serving
amen.
22 years. I haven't seen one yet. But what he told me was a little bit of an extension of what Benjamin Davis said. I got a chance to fly with him. We went flying in a sailplane at the Air Force Academy. One of the greatest flights I ever took in my entire life was to get a chance to fly with a real Tuskegee Airman. And at the end of all of it, when there weren't any crowds around, it was just he and I just kind of looking at one another, he said, thank you. And what I was thinking was he was saying thank you for the flight. And what he really meant, and he went into deeper detail, he was saying thank you, right, for being where you are, because the fact that you are there validates everything that we suffered and sacrificed for. And he would tell stories of driving past the Air Force Academy when he was a younger man and realizing that there were no or very, very few African-American cadets sitting up there. So when he told me that, it was like a lightning bolt from the sky, because essentially what he was doing is he was passing the baton from his generation to mine to be able to carry that heritage forward, to be able to represent well, and to lead, right? And so between that story with Ben Davis and then that story with Lee Archer, I've always taken that as like a personal mission to continuously represent and be examples and role model for other people in the same way that they were role models for me, right? And I couldn't be more elated that our newest trainer is the Red Hawk, right? And it has a red tail, because it's a great legacy, great homage, if you will, to our Air Force history that we've now embraced it. At the Air Force Academy now, it's now Ben Davis Airfield, which it wasn't before. It was just the Air Force Academy Airfield, and now it's named after the Tuskegee Airmen. So when I look at all of that, And especially when I kind of contrast that against kind of how we're having this dialogue in society nowadays, it makes me very, very proud to be a part of an organization that wants to embrace that heritage and to be a part of it, and is really actively really wrestling with that and looking for the right answers as opposed to just avoiding it.
Yeah, so let me pile a couple things on about the ET7, the Red Hawk. I find it an amazing mashup of where the Air Force is going and recognizing the greatness about the Air Force's past. I love Red Tail's story. I love the P-51 that the Red Tails flew, and their legacy and their history is super exciting to all airmen, independent of what your race and your creed is. But the fact that the Secretary Barrett has declared that is the first in the E series, so little E ET7 with digital engineering, digital design in it, I think that pull from the past with where we going in the future and accelerating change in that direction is really just an amazing alignment of history that we get to be a part of. And the test center, literally about 100 yards from where we're sitting right now, is where the ET7 is going to do a large majority of its testing.
And so I wanted to pull up, as we've talked throughout the broadcast about STEM, we've got a B-roll package of some of the classes and how they were delivered. So I kind of wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of talk through as you see some of the classes. But we had airmen from all across Edwards actually providing these lessons, and they were some pretty educational lessons.
They were amazing. I did not get a chance to watch it all. But I tell you, the ones that I did tune in on, so as I did see this one, and that lady was talking about dark matter and black holes. It's just amazing stuff that you, if you tuned in any throughout the week, Monday through Thursday, you got some great exposure to things. The classes were targeted in the morning at elementary school, then middle school and high school. And then another thing, pushing on the theme that the Air Force, the Department of Defense, takes diversity of background and diversity very, very seriously. We had a fourth hour in Spanish for our Latinx communities, and say, hey, the Air Force is here for you, and we want your contributions in technology as well. We had a couple superstars on Edwards Air Force Base, Humberto Blanco and Alita Van Hoy, that were the leads for that throughout the week. Tremendous stuff and a tremendous opportunity to expose folks to the science, technology, engineering, and math principles. Laz, I'm sure you watched a little bit. What did you get out of it?
Yeah, what it reminded me of was in high school or junior high or whatever, when you're taught science, technology, engineering, mathematics, here's the classic critique, right? The critique is, why do I need this, right? What's it for? And I would tend to think that's because of the method in which how we teach it. And people kind of lose how STEM has real impact to their daily lives. What I got out of watching those shows was there's a research component, there's the science, there's the mathematics behind it, but then what I really, really got was there's real application day to day, how this makes a difference. People here at Edwards, I mean, this is what kind of drew me a bit to test, was the idea that there's always something cool out there from a science, STEM, whatever kind of standpoint, and that here you would actually get a chance to have hands-on with it, that you could actually physically touch it and you could see how it kind of goes. I mean, we were talking before about, the art and the science of STEM and combining those together, which is what drove me academically. I've always looked at it as every time I fly an airplane, yeah, it's something that really is stirring. It's very emotional. I mean, even now, I still get excited just being on a flight line and looking at airplanes. Traditionally, when you come to an air show, that's what everyone comes for. They come for the loud noises. They come for the fast airplanes. What we're trying to do with this one is still provide that, but then also give you a peek behind the curtain of everything that happens to make all that come together from a science standpoint, all the math, but make it real and make it engaging, right? Something that people can really understand and get excited about.
Yeah, so great stuff, sir. We certainly appreciate your time today and your perspective on all things, including, diversity and the Red Tails and their historic legacy. But didn't they rename the Academy airfield for him recently?
Yeah, they absolutely did. So it was really nice to see that. Because, again, that's where I flew with a Tuskegee Airman in a sailplane way back in the late 1990s or so. So to see that the Air Force Academy has embraced that and, a visionary of aviation, right, and Benjamin Davis, that we've now appropriately recognized that, I think is really good, especially for our Air Force Academy cadets. I mean, that's your first exposure to the U.S. Air Force as a cadet. So to instill that when people are still young, so that it's just a part of who they are as airmen, and we embrace all of our histories, that's really significant.
Well, thanks so much, sir. We certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, and as Laz walks off screen here, I'll tell him very publicly, thanks for being my wingman. And folks, when you look at us, you see some aspect of the diversity that's in the front office at many organizations across the Air Force. But if you look at our resumes and our backgrounds, that type of background of education and exposure and life paths are also very, very important. And the synergy that I get because he is on my right hand, and I think he benefits the same from my different look and different walk through life are tremendous. And that is very deep in our culture at Edwards. It's very deep in our culture in the Air Force and the Department of Defense in general.
Well, it's such a war-fighting imperative to have that diversity of thought, and it's exciting to see the changes and the initiatives that are coming forward in that arena as we have a new guest joining us here, and it's Dr. David Smith, the Director of Air Force Production and Flight Test Facility at Plant 42 in Palmdale. How are you, sir?
Outstanding. This is just an awesome opportunity to spend a little time with you all today. I mean, what better to do than to be around aircraft?
Absolutely,
it's
Jester.
Just so cool.
I could not agree more. I'll tell you, there is no human in the valley and maybe on the planet more excited to have seen the B-52 do all its flybys and takeoffs and landings today than somebody with a little bit of B-52 time in his background than this gentleman right here. So it was good to see that iron in the air, and I know both of us wished we could have been on it, but we got to talk instead. So, Jester, welcome.
So will this be a good forum to talk about requaling in the B-52?
You know, Jester, you're always open, and if you're willing to sit behind me, maybe we'll go through the courses together.
I'd love it.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
I'll do it in a minute.
You know, that's what's so interesting about service, though, right? Like, obviously you've served, I served, and it still runs deep within you, this lifetime of service. That's what makes what we do so great.
So I would offer, interesting that you say that, as I agree totally, but I think, especially in aviators, that we actually establish a romance with airplanes. There is a jet out there, old Stearman, a Cessna somewhere, that we draw a legacy from, and our heart's committed to it like it is to a loved one in our family. And, you know, I didn't want a B-52 out of flight school. But when I learned about the Buff and started flying the Buff, that romance emerged. And that legacy is something I'm very proud to be a part of. Now, I may have children flying the B-52 in 20 or 30 years. We'll see.
So let's talk a little bit about Plant 42 because it has a unique place in the Edwards ecosystem. So what is it that happens at Plant 42?
So, you know, I'm going to take a little different journey to answer your question. I'm going to talk about B-52s. Okay, so we got a legacy platform that's been around here forever, but we keep improving it. And through the demands put on that legacy platform and the good things it's done, we've identified national needs for new systems, new capabilities. Plant 42 mirrors that on the production side. So my job at Plant 42 is to set conditions for success for our excellent defense contractor partners, our mission partners out there, along with our R&D mission run by organizations like NASA. That legacy of success can be traced back to systems well before the B-52 was put on the drawing board. Plant 42's history is long-lived. We have the first jet hangar in the Air Force's inventory at Plant 42, and we build the capabilities not only for yesterday, but for tomorrow. So the most advanced systems are produced there, along with our legacy systems being improved, developed, modernized, so that the warfighter has the best possible tools. To do that, we have about a 5,600 acre facility with several thousand personnel, both Department of Defense and contractors, setting conditions for that success. There's a little bit of cocktail trivia that you all know the answer to already, is how many aircraft has the Air Force actually built? And the answer to that question is none. We don't build airplanes. We contract build airplanes. We contracted for the right flyer. And that's what we're doing today. And there's a hidden blessing in there that is not Department of Defense, but is this thing called the Constitution. We empower commerce. So a just and reasonable price and a just and reasonable profit to our defense contractors makes the nation strong, makes our industrial base strong, and makes the Air Force strong.
And I wanted to ask, you talked about the legacy of a platform like the B-52 in all its grace and glory, but I actually wanted to ask you about the fifth generation work that was done with the F-22 and the F-35s and how Plant 42 contributed to that.
Well, we're still actively involved. Now, the F-22 used to do its depot maintenance at Plant 42. It doesn't anymore, but it was done there for some time. And of course, the initial production of all these systems, or at least subsystems, are done right there. We are building the mid-body for the F-35 at Plant 42 today. Interestingly, that's being done by Northrop as a sub to the prime contractor, which is Lockheed. It's interesting that our defense contractors can work so very closely together, which I know years ago was a great concern as there were multiple mergers and acquisitions in aerospace industry in total, that would the defense industrial base suffer due to over investment versus divestment of the aerospace industrial base. It has done great things in partnership together to produce combat capability for our warfighters. And those are just two examples of systems, F-35, F-22, awesome systems that we touch every day down there. But there's things going on there today, producing and maintaining capability, like B-2 depot maintenance is there. The venerable U-2's depot maintenance is there. Multiple other programs. And if you just go back in time a tiny bit, the space shuttles were built there. SR-71 integration happened down there. There's been remarkable programs executed at the plant. I would offer we probably have more roots tied to Collier Award-winning programs than any other installation on Earth.
And we've used STEM as the theme of this 2020 Aerospace Valley Air Show, this hybrid edition, and it's really day 5 of that, as we've had STEM activities all week, and we've talked about it throughout the broadcast. But one of the aspects that we talked about a little bit earlier was hiring, and so there's a need for skilled workers in the STEM arena at Plant 42.
Absolutely. So what we're fostering down there, and it's an entirely stolen idea. I took it. I'm not displeased. Took it from a little company called Tesla. So what we are instilling is a farm team mentality, utilizing STEM as the basis for how we're going to perform. So the pros, that's us. You have made the pros when you're part of our team. And that's a big team. That's contractors, that's government civilians, that's active duty, that's multiple support agencies out there at the plant, and back here at the legacy roots of Edwards Air Force Base. So that's the pros. Now, to do the pros effectively, I've got to grow people through AAA. So I need that farm team mentality. That's my 4-year brick and mortar universities. But I need a AA to feed my AAA. That's my 2-year junior colleges, my community college programs. I need that single A program as well, my trade schools in high school, my STEM programs touching people at that level. But all those things don't happen if I don't have a pony league and a little league going all the way back to T-ball. So I make a direct, realistic connection between a grade school STEM program like, as an example, Starbase, which I just think is amazing, to the fact that we get a senior technical brilliant mind on the books at Plant 42 delivering combat capability right now?
I tell you, to foot stomp science, technology, engineering, and math that's available and present on display at Plant 42 as part of the larger Aerospace Valley ecosystem. If you are a hardcore scientist, NASA is a place you can go, and Plant 42 is a huge place. Sophia, the Boeing 747 that is doing amazing research right now, is hardcore science, Plant 42. Technology. Our mission partners, literally Dr. Smith and my mission partners at Plant 42 right now, are absolutely recruiting folks that are technologically savvy, that may be a single A or double A level of education, and they're good with that, and we want them to contribute that way. But then you get into engineers all over the place at the primes, engineers in the Air Force, engineers in the leadership, and math. Math is the language that just wraps it all together and will soon, I think, lead in artificial intelligence, data mining, and data analytics. And then there's a leadership thing that permeates all that as well. And I think Plant 42 is an exceptional example because it includes Big A Airmen and it includes all facets of STEM. And I'm going to give you this one as we kind of wrap it up for today's broadcast. Jester, we've talked about Big A Airmen, but we haven't talked about one other facet of Airmen that you also are a member of. So if you throw in the TFI perspective real quick for us and how you pivoted from active duty, Air Force civilian, and then the third leg, that'd be a great contribution for this broadcast.
So there's a lot of different ways to serve. And serving on active duty, I loved with all my heart. And you give me a broad shot at doing that again, I'm going to take the shot, right? I've loved civil service, being able to change this uniform from one that looked a lot like what General Higer's wearing to one that looks a lot like what I'm obviously wearing. But a weekend a month, I get to look a lot like General Higer.
A lot.
So a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm the Air Component Commander for California's Guard, the Cal Guard. I'm in a what's called Title 32 capacity, which means I'm not a federal asset, I'm a state asset. A lot of people don't realize the Guard is really a state organization that can be federalized versus a federal organization that does a lot of work in the state. So my airmen, my soldiers and sailors in the Cal Guard, we're one of the few states that actually has a maritime component as well, right now are heavily deployed in support of wildfires, have been doing work at COVID food banks, and are making a difference every day in getting this state and this nation through a very real crisis. Thank you for that plug, sir.
It's not a plug, Jester. I think total force is very important for a way that our nation competes. Science, technology, engineering, and math doesn't work if we don't have the folks on the front line contributing as they can and serving as they are interested and willing to do so. So thanks for staying in uniform on that weekend a month when you're not working for me.
Dr. Smith, we certainly appreciate you stopping by today on the broadcast, and great stuff. Thank you very much.
So can I throw in one more quick comment?
Let's do it.
So we talk a lot about the technology, the jets. That's amazing. It's cool. But I've got airmen on duty 24/7. They're carrying a gun. They're protecting that installation. They're standing by a hose ready to put out a fire on a major national defense asset. They are always there. They're always ready. They're rarely thanked. I want to publicly praise them for what they do.
And let me pile on that thanks, not just to the airmen that work for Dr. Smith at Plant 42, but also to all the airmen that support this installation at installations across the world in the Department of the Air Force that are on duty 24/7, 365. They didn't go tell the work when the pandemic hit. They stayed on the front line and they kept the installation safe. And a very special shout out as I clear off for the day to those that are defending the installations and providing the 24/7, 365 support in combat and in harm's way.
What a great day. We're wrapping up here, day one. I mean, we saw a lot of iron. We talked with a lot of great guests today with a lot of great perspectives. And, sir, for closing comments from you, I really want to reiterate, like, how this air show is. The end result maybe looks like the airplanes in the sky, but it really starts with STEM.
It does. Yeah, it really starts with STEM. They even before the pandemic hit us and forced us to potentially look at pivoting to the hybrid option, the number one priority of an open house and an air show is to have those aha moments, or the I remember when I was a kid and moments. And you get that when you can take people to airplanes on a flight line. And when that looked to be impossible, instead of saying we'll Rolex or we'll kick the can a year or two from now, the team around me and the team that has literally just executed a first ever event the last 2 hours said, you know what, boss, I think we can still fly. I think there's a way to do this. And instead of bringing the people on the base to the air show, let's take that air show to the people. And the primary thing we wanted to keep in that is we wanted to connect airplanes, technology, the Air Force, and NASA to science, technology, engineering, and math, and really, really dig deep down in the educational areas. And hopefully, if you're watching today and you're thinking, I wonder what I'm going to do when I graduate from high school or graduate from college or when I get older, what am I going to do? I hope that something has inspired you this week to do a little bit more at your math class, or maybe consider taking that physics class or a little bit more in a technical field. I remember vividly as a fifth grader when I had a teacher that really inspired me to think math was cool. My classmates didn't, but she sure convinced me it was. And I don't know if that was the single seed for me or not, but it was certainly very important. And so I hope something this week for you, the students, and literally the leaders and the technologists of tomorrow saw in the Monday through Thursday sessions, and then capstone by what we did today in the last 2 hours. I hope it resonates with you, and I hope there's still that opportunity. And then I'll pivot real fast to a bunch of gratitude. What we have just experienced, Dan, from our seats right now was a first. And a first is not unusual to Edwards, so I think it's very appropriate that we have just literally watched the first 2 hours ever of a hybrid air show. And that isn't possible without a whole bunch of people that have worked tirelessly during the pandemic to make this happen. And it isn't just folks on the team here at Edwards. It's folks in San Antonio, it's folks at Hill, it's folks at Wright-Patterson at our higher headquarters, Air Force Materiel Command, and there's a whole slew of folks that worked tirelessly for us and on our behalf in the Pentagon and the National Capital Region as well. So thank you to all of you that helped make it happen today. I appreciate all the involvement from the air crew, the folks that generated the sorties, the folks that controlled the sorties, to our partners in the FAA that helped us control it, to the cameramen that were out on the sites, and most importantly to the people that have watched and participated, the tens of thousands of you, and now as of today hundreds of thousands, that have been able to participate in this hybrid air show from the center of the aerospace testing universe. And so that's going to give us a wrap on day one, but don't fear, we have a second day coming up. We'll be on the air 10:30 Pacific time tomorrow on all the platforms that you streamed today. So the guest list is long. We thank them all. Special thanks to you, General Heiger, for riding co-pilot with me, or maybe I rode co-pilot with you. I don't know how this works. You were definitely in control of the airplane, and I just heckled you along the way. Thank you, Dan. A special shout-out to our second audio-visual squadron crew. Fantastic images all day long. Thank you to Sergeant Harris, our floor director, Mike Rayner, our director, our entire crew. I'm Dan Hawkins from the AETC Public Affairs. So long. We'll talk to you tomorrow from the center of the aerospace testing universe.